Welcome back to the home studio. Welcome to episode 102, also take 102 of the opening for episode 102 of the Stevie Richards show. And James just went, yeah, sounds about right. So let's go right to my co-host, James Romero, who, by the way, he has 3 words for you. 3 simple words.
You talked over the whole damn thing. We're taking over.
I forgot my own promo. It's 3 simple words. Now off to you.
Right, we're taking over. This is the WWF Monday
way to
Night
say
Raw.
With a bunch of emotion, man.
Oh my, yeah, I said it a bunch of emotion the first time.
My God, stop yelling at me.
Hey, no need to, don't bite my head off. No need to get angry. Right, we're taking over. It's WWF Monday Night Raw. It's going to be a 2-part episode. This with the BWO and some of ECW heading over to the Manhattan Center, when the WWF crew were all in Germany putting on the worst show imaginable, apart from Bulldog and Owen. But man, do you remember the Germany episode and the South Africa episodes in '97? They did.
I remember the South Africa one. I remember the Kuwaiti Cup as well. But that Germany show was the one that when they came back, that was kind of the linchpin or the thing that made Vince Russo really go up into the head writing position, correct?
Yeah, that's the one. So I guess so. Both of them say that was an awful show. Not that it was an awful show, but it was a house show, basically. It was a house show with house show cameras and bad lighting, and I think it did like the worst rating they'd ever done.
During the Monday Night Wars with WCW Monday Nitro, so it's not quite, you don't want to put that kind of presentation. It was really just a production. I'm sure the wrestling and other things, but it was not up to what WWF production was kind of like what the fans were used to watching that.
Indeed. So the point is that half the crew are in Germany. So the remaining crew were in the Manhattan Center, and then it was sprinkled in with ECW wrestlers who were going to be promoting, wrestling, doing their stories, as well as promoting the upcoming ECW Barely Legal pay-per-view as well. We'll get into all that in a second. Let's do the intro. I've got a channel, James Romero. I react to news. Stevie and Chase Brogan are working together on Chase Brogan's tech channel, his well-regarded tech channel with over 600,000 subscribers as well. And we need links in the description for that. I don't think I've updated those, but for people who don't know...
Can you put it in related channels or suggested channels on the homepage of this?
Yes, as soon as you, on the Patreon, do a section for people who can request matches for us to watch in the future. As soon as that happens, then I'll get right on it.
They're getting a bonus watch along, so if we're talking about Patreon, but before we get to that, and James, you're right. Sometimes I'm on top of things, but sometimes all the work, 3 to 4 different channels, a lot of fun, but some of the other stuff goes. And I also have to do a poll to see what watch-alongs are coming up, so we'll get to that in a second. First and foremost, speaking of Chase Brogan, he started working with Perry Saturn, and we suggest and we really encourage each and every one of you to go and subscribe to Perry's channel. We'll definitely put a link in the description for that. Check that out. We also are talking about hopefully doing stuff in the future, along with people like Maven and Zach, doing some stuff with Chase and Perry as well.
Yeah, so if you want to know all about that, I guess it'll be up by the time this show's out. If you go to the Stevie Richards Show Patreon, not only do we have the watch-alongs every single week, and it's the show before the show that I don't know if most people watch that, but we were talking about our plans of doing collaborations. I'm going to go to Florida at some point, we think, and then it's going to be like a week of just tons of filming for everybody involved, and hopefully Maven will join us. Hopefully quite a lot of people will join us, in fact. So all the YouTubers are going to have this like giant, I guess, summit. Or not all of them, but, enough YouTubers in the wrestling space are going to have this giant summit, it seems like, and we're all just going to do a week's worth of recording.
Which includes us working out together and filming it.
You have threatened me with that.
Well, I mean, I will, if you work out with me, I will. What was the post? What do I need to do again on Patreon?
Do that.
CTE.
Do that post where people can suggest watch-alongs for future episodes.
No, it was one before that. No, I have 2 things. I now 3 counting the action figure episode, which I'm trying to 3D print my action figures right now.
Right, so you need to get all your action figures, your dolls. We need to, because I really want to do that episode. We would have done that in like the first 10 episodes. But like, I've got 3 of the figures behind me, still waiting to go. And
Hey,
you need to get the
how about if
expensive
we
ones.
save that for when we're in person, and then we can just basically examine the action figures in person?
Oh yeah, okay. So here's what it is what I'm getting at is that I've already bought half of them, so it's a money saving thing for you.
Well, I don't think here we go again. I don't think the Dr. Stevie TNA action figure's worth 75 to 100, because you looked it up, you're like, oh my God. And there was another one that was way up there in basically over $100.
I'm going Daphne TNA 2-pack, wasn't it?
Yes.
So it's on. So it's the Cross the Line 3. Okay, right. We're getting off the topic, but we'll get back to that because that's from Jack Pacific. I didn't realize they went to TNA. So anyway, that's coming up soon as well. We've got to do the figure and merch episode that I'm looking forward to. But this is going to be part 1 of the We're Taking. Oh, also Stevie's on Cameo. 5 stars. So we're talking about the WWF Monday Night Raw thing that we need to get into fairly quickly here because I've got people downstairs who are cladding my gym. Doesn't that sound awful when I say that? But I've got men working. I have to pay cash in hand.
First of all, most people aren't going to understand what cladding means. I just nod along with it, just coverings, right?
It's what's on your wall.
Paneling.
Okay, right. We just call it cladding or whatever, but paneling's fine.
Okay. Yeah, you
Okay.
do sound like you do. Get the pipe. Get the pipe. It's saying things like that. Like you have people, servants, butlers, full-time construction. Maybe you have lawyers on retainer like Vince used to with Jerry McDuffie. There you go. And you know what you got to do? You got to lean out the window and go, work faster.
That you have to point with this bit of the pipe, I think.
Yeah.
You
look like somebody out of like a Kingsman fan film right now.
Thank you. What are we talking about?
We're talking about the ECW, quote, invasion of Monday Night Raw that took place on February 24th, 1997 at the Manhattan Center. And we're going to share experiences, most of which people, even with shoot interviews that I've done throughout the years, haven't been many, but I haven't gone into detail about this very night and some of the little Easter eggs that happened backstage.
So, WWF RAW in the Manhattan Center, February 24th, 1997. It is a famous episode. It is a famous episode of RAW where ECW's wrestlers invade. And basically the invitational challenge of Jerry the King Lawler, I think, the week before. A lot of the WWF crew, as we say, were overseas in Germany shooting the worst-looking episode of RAW they ever did, which also happened to have one of the best matches ever, which was Bulldog versus Owen for the European title finals. That would air the following week. But then the other reason that everybody was there, the ECW guys were there, apart from just to fill the card out, was that Vince and Heyman seemed to have this weird secret relationship where Vince was helping Heyman out and ECW out in quite a lot of ways to, I don't know if to challenge WCW or just have an ally against WCW, but whenever Vince's back is against the wall, he generally looks for help in these kinds of things. Like just like a month or so before, he was working with AAA, which is kind of bizarre as well for, quite a few episodes. Anyway, let's get to the day itself, because we'll get to Paul and Vince, we'll get to loads of different things. But the day itself, Tommy Dreamer said that bringing the WWF RAW ECW crossover episode together was a deal limited to Vince and Paul and Bruce Pritchard, and that's kind of it. So, when was the first time that you realized that you're going to be on this show, when this show was booked, that it was going to be live as well? Because it's the first time you've ever wrestled live on television. How advanced in the process did you realize all this was happening?
Well, I don't know the exact amount of notice that we had, but I have to think it was at minimum a week and at maximum 2 weeks. And I would say maybe it's been closer to maybe a week, because we were available for anything, whether it was going to be to go up to New York to do some pre-tapes at Ron and Charlie's, to be able to do stuff with Joey on camera, or like when we almost got arrested when Meanie did Blue Dust with a hose and everything in the playground. We were pretty much on call in a great way. You want to go up there and perform and do all these different things. But I believe, and probably for the benefit of people like me, there wasn't that much notice to think about it. I would say probably a week. We were probably called individually. It wasn't like a talent meeting. We weren't at the arena the week before, and Paul said, "This is what we're going to do." I think he individually addressed this, and then he told all the boys that were going, "This is what we're doing." I don't think there was, obviously we got to the building early. It was a TV day. We still weren't used to that, as a matter of fact. It wasn't 12 or 1, but we got there fairly early. Even Raven got there on time. He didn't, he wasn't responsible for he wasn't responsible for all the heat of showing up at like 7 o'clock to the arena. But I think for my benefit, I'm glad, thinking back, that I had probably less time to overthink everything and get really, really nervous about it.
Well,
I
that's
still
kind of the
did, by
next.
the way. It didn't, it could have been 2 hours notice. I still would have got nervous.
Well, yeah, I mean, was it kind of everything I guess that you hoped it would be in that? And not just the match, but I mean, just the kind of going into the locker room and seeing all these faces, that you would have probably only seen on TV up to that point.
Well, you have to think too, we had very much a territorial type thing, an adversarial type thing with everybody outside of ECW. Paul really did push a narrative successfully that it was us against them. So how do you weigh that? I can't even see in my young mind, obviously growing up, being a WWF fan and an NWA fan when it turned into WCW when I started wrestling. I'm talking about two separate companies, but TV companies, and going to WWF and saying, you're going to have a match live on Raw with Vince on commentary and all these other people. And then basically it's a hometown thing. We were the hometown team because all the ECW fans showed up to the Manhattan Center to really make it feel like kind of like a second ECW arena in a way, even with the way it was set up in a smaller venue. But I knew it was a big deal. I was nervous, but I also had Raven, who had worked live TV, who had wrestled on very stringent times to kind of get us ready for that. And we already knew that ECW's pay-per-view was happening. I know it was off again, on again throughout the months, but we knew it was going to happen. So I think Raven was already training me to stay on 10, 12, 15-minute matches and not go over.
Is the Manhattan Center, as Mean Gene once put it, a toilet?
Was it a toilet? Well, look at where we were coming from, man.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you didn't have running water, did you?
Yeah, they had locker rooms and stuff. This is pre-renovation and becoming the 2300 arena. This is the ECW arena that everybody has heard about. You're lucky if you can get a sink shower somewhere. Most times you didn't. You went back to the travel lodge. There was an open area, but then you had the little like click locker room underneath the stairs where Taz and everybody was back there. And that's where Paulie usually kind of put together some of the card and had meetings. So no, we were like, this is like the Taj Mahal. Look at this place. At least I was.
So you get there for the taping. Did you actually really speak to any of the WWF people or the wrestlers, or was, as you alluded to before, Paul Heyman really did just keep you in a corner and say it's us against them?
I was respectful to everybody. I was taught to shake hands. And of course, Raven probably kind of coached me a little bit on this to not be, kind of played into all this. We're all in the same business kind of thing. So he, I think, introduced me to a couple of people because they knew who he was from the Johnny Paulo days. And you pointed out something I didn't even know about during a watch along. He was at the same exact spot in front of the Raw logo as Raven as he was with Johnny Paulo. It was kind of just a really deep Easter egg right there. But I remember going up and shaking him, and I was always taught to shake everybody's hand. Don't sit down, to make sure you're respectful. It's our locker room. And I very much, now there was some people I think in ECW were like, why are you talking to them? Why are you talking? I'm like, what do you want me to do? You're like, I'm just being friendly. Here's a funny story on a side note. I met Brian Adams, and was it Brian Clark as well? Brian Adams with still DOA, I think, still with the cycle.
No, at that point he was still with the Nation. Brian Clark wasn't there.
He was not with Brian Clark, but I don't know if Brian Clark was there as Adam Bomb. I remember it was Brian Adams.
Not in '97.
Okay, well, there was two guys that were really nice guys. And during this time was before LASIK surgery. So without my glasses, I couldn't see anything. And I lost my hair tie. and I was in like one of the smaller bathrooms just trying to. Now, someone could have been really mean, and close that door, really, right, rough me up or whatever. But I remember Brian, I heard his voice and he goes, "Hey man, what are you looking for?" And I got up and I said, "Oh, I'm Steve." I introduced myself and he said his name was Brian. I was like, "Dude, I can't see without my glasses and I have like my hair tied somewhere on the floor." I go, "It's not a big deal." He goes, "Oh, it's right over." And he held me. I was like, everybody's so nice here, not knowing a whole nother element within this company.
Any other backstage stuff before you go to the ring? That I've got way more follow up questions, but
I
any
think
more
we sat with
backstage things?
Sonny during the AOL chat thing. Myself, Meanie, and Nova.
You were on the
Were
AOL chat
Yeah,
afterwards.
well, I think we weren't officially in there, but we saw Sonny in there, and we walked in, and there was a couch there, and she was like on a chair next to the like one of the website people, or doing that, and we just kind of were in on the chat or whatever. They didn't show us, obviously. I think there is a segment during this episode where somebody was in that room. It might have been Sonny, but we weren't in there during the live cut in of that.
Did Sonny? Well, okay, I've got Sonny follow up questions, but we will save those for next week. I promise you. Um, Anybody apart from Crush, I guess, that sticks out as a memory, or someone who like really surprised you, like, man, that dude's huge, or whatever it might be.
I saw Dustin.
Hmm.
I believe I saw Dustin backstage, and I was like, "Oh my God, and I always wanted to meet. I thought the Goldust character was just so. You said during this they muted him down before they ramped him back up again. But I just remember like going up, being like, wanting to ask him like, what was it like going from Dustin Rhodes and then this with did you because I was dealing with some stuff as a heel previous where people would like slash tires, break windows on my little car that wasn't worth anything, but it was something to me. So I didn't know what Dustin was experiencing. So I always wanted, and I remember the Slaughter stuff. I was always curious about what's your life out like outside all this, and what do you have to deal with? I didn't know about the bulletproof limo or Slaughter with the bulletproof vest. And I didn't know if there was anybody looking for, I mean, it's 1997, like you said. And how did like regular casual people treat Goldust outside of in his regular life? So, but I was too scared to go up to him because he didn't look happy that day, put it that way. And I think the promo kind of showed it.
Be interesting to know what was going on that day, but he will that will happen.
Well, I wasn't going to
next
go up
week
and
as well.
ask him. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Do you think people in general with the WWF kind of got it? That this is just like a brief, crossover kind of thing, or do you think some people are actually offended? I know Jerry Lawler is part of a character kind of thing. I've got more quotes for him that we'll get to later, but was anybody else, a bit wary of you guys or unhappy?
I felt a sense like there were some people that were like, it happens in just about any locker room, but you got to think also, I have to back up. Now, we were very much a team atmosphere. We were very much the ECW. It's always going to, I always use the analogy, not on the level because those people have sacrificed so much, but I put it on a level of like Marines. If we were to see ECW, if I was to see Sandman, even Tommy, Raven, whatever, issues with Raven or anybody else, it's kind of like when we all get together for like one of those conventions, reunions, signings, whatever it might be, everybody's back to the same page. You know what I mean? We are very much still team-like atmosphere. But with that being said, how does it look to somebody where you're truly an independent contractor trying to get your money? Here comes these people. You think, well, we can carry the show. We don't need outside help. I'm sure it's very territorial. But then we all came in with ECW like sweatsuit type things, all like we were a big team. And I have to think some people were rolling their eyes at that, like, look at these marks, kind of like the people that walked into the Boston Garden that time with their PWI 500 ranking on a like varsity jacket. They had to be side eyeing us, but I did feel some level of like, what are these people doing here? And Paul was like, stay away from everybody. Stay away from everybody. They're the enemy. It's like, I think I turned to Dreamer. I was like, there's no way. I still had that little bit of the, you know what, theory kind of like outlook. And I looked around and said, we're wrestling matches, we're doing segments. They're supposed to be the enemy. Paulie is putting Vince over on commentary. I think Paul and Vince are working together. And I think Dreamer is somebody who's like, shut up, don't say that. And I was like, okay, just getting a feeling about this.
Dreamer would take that harder than most, wouldn't he? At the end,
Yes.
I guess.
WrestleMania 17.
Yes. Okay, so because you brought up Paul Heyman, Paulie Dangerous, whatever you want to call him, because McMahon actually calls him Paul Heyman on commentary on the match that we watched before, which was interesting. But we have to talk about Paulie, and we're going to do a couple of different things on him here. And the first is, when did you first realize? In fact, before we get to the Vince McMahon connection, and there was definitely a connection in many different ways with Vince. Even on this show, on the next one, ECW will be, in 2 weeks' time, there'll be heavy involvement with the Manhattan Center. In the week we're talking about 2 weeks later, there's like the podiums, those really sweet-looking WWF podiums with Paul and Jerry Lawler. But before we get to even that, firstly, do you remember the phone call that Paul Heyman made, whether it was set up or not, to WWF Livewire, where he introduced himself as Bruce from Connecticut?
Yes, I do. I remember a lot of Livewire moments where people calling in, and there's a famous compilation of Jim Ross's like over it or something, and people just keep asking questions about it. But I do remember that. I remember that time was just, we were able to do that. And WWF at the time, up until this point, like you said, they were trying to work with AAA at one point, now ECW and other things, but they seem to be a closed off ecosystem, a walled garden, and when these kinds of things happen and they open up the lines quite literally on Livewire, it does introduce like a factor of like what's going to happen here. But I think they were screening some of the calls, which led me to believe after the fact, like, yeah, this is part of whatever angle. But yeah, very creative and have Paul kind of be our hype man, our PT Barnum, and kind of our avatar and do those things. But I do think in a way, some people, like you said, there was people that had no idea about the working relationship or had ideas about this. So I think some people maybe who was on that actual Livewire episode? Was that Jim
Was it
Ross and Sonny?
Yeah,
Sonny was the co-host at one point. Then they even had Russo coming in with Cornette, and they had all these different things that were really dynamic on there. But was Jim Ross the host or was Vince the host of Livewire
I
when
don't know
Paul
if Michael
called
Hayes
in?
was occasionally. I can't remember who it was, but I do. Do you know what the funniest thing about Livewire was? Like the funniest incident is that they had Ahmed Johnson in studio talking, and then Ron Simmons caught Farouk calling in on the phone, and you could understand what Ron Simmons was saying better on the phone than Ahmed Johnson in real life. That's amazing.
Well, they did the Livewire too after Ron and Ahmed had their thing where he kicked him in the kidney, that he was laid up, and they had him kind of on via satellite back then. But yeah, Paul called. That was such a great time to be able to be in ECW and see us, kind of taking shots at a company we didn't realize we were working for.
Let's go to the In Your House. So this was, I think it was September, around that time of 96. So we're talking, like 5 months prior to the Raw invasion, as it were. And it was in Philadelphia. Mick Foley, Mankind, he had to cut a promo on the pre-show, the free-for-all, like to try and turn the crowd against him because he was wrestling Shawn Michaels in kind of one of the more famous matches of his career, definitely. And in the first match of the night, I think it was on pay-per-view rather than the free-for-all. Either way, it was early on. And it was Bradshaw, Justin Hawk Bradshaw, no less, with Uncle Zebekiah versus Savio Vega. And there was interference from ECW guys in the front row. That's Paul Heyman, Tommy Dreamer, and the Sandman. The Sandman, like, throws a drink, spits a drink in Savio's face, and there ends up being a massive kerfuffle. You said you watched this live and you got, the whole inside scoop at the time. What do you remember of that?
Well, what I remember was that not everybody was clued in, and we're going to get that in just a second about Jerry Briscoe and other people. They did keep this close to the vest, which could have been kind of dangerous. And I know Dreamer, when he came back from that, I think you have the quotes. I don't remember the exact, but I'll paraphrase that. He was just like, yeah, we thought we were going to have to fight our way out of that. We thought we were being set. Back then, people have to understand, there were times in territories where talents got set up, people got set up in certain ways, maybe some violent. So we don't know, not we, they, I wasn't there. They didn't know whether they were going to be able to fight their way out, or what was going to happen. You probably have an idea that Paul probably definitely had an idea that some were clued in, but most weren't. So there was an air of realism, of a real threat of something going sideways. Of course, we're live, pal, on a pay-per-view. What if a real fight did break out? What if the whole locker room emptied? What if if that all happened, how could you go and have a pay-per-view after all that? You probably could, but people will be talking maybe a little bit more about that than even the excellent match between Shawn and Mankind. That's the one where Mick literally put his head through the announce table, right?
Is that not the one in Survivor Series 97 where he takes
Maybe,
the dive
but
off
this
the
is the
apron?
one where he tried to do the belly to back off the second turnbuckle to the table, and Shawn turned in on him. But
Yeah.
I thought he took the head bump in that match too.
If I'm right in saying that was against Kane, Survivor Series 97, because that's the one where he goes into the table. He kind of almost like goes headfirst straight through like a hole in it, if I'm
Yeah.
right in remembering that.
Yeah, and he doesn't even put his knee forward like I do on the DDTs. He took it head first.
What Dreamer said was, quote, "We didn't know what we were getting into. We all met up in the parking lot. We had the Eliminators and the crowd as backup in case we got into a fight. I found out later that Savio Vega was the only one who knew. Bradshaw didn't even know about it. He was ready to fight, and Savio cut him off."
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't even know Savio was clued in. I'm sure somebody had to tell one of them, or else both guys would jump it. And I would say this: I'm sure Perry would disagree with this, as all my takes, but man, those are two guys you want to have backing you up. So go ahead and disagree, Perry.
I messaged Perry this morning and said, "Dude, it's too late for the show, but can you provide any extra details? And we'll try and add it in the B-roll as well." Or I might even try and like voice over or quote or whatever it is to like wedge.
He was probably disappointed nothing did happen, because Perry, man, like that would be like, the playground's open, ready to play. Yeah, I could see people running, including Russ, but the fans. You see Perry and John standing in the crowd, and then Perry has the "oh, I'm ready to fight now" face. No, I'm gone.
Dude, that's why I asked him. I said, "Did you have to sneak in, like under the cover or something, so no one bothered you, or where were you sitting, and what were you kind of told?" I guess. So hopefully, I'll have something to throw in here. Dutch didn't know who was Uncle Zebekiah, Bradshaw's manager. Bradshaw didn't know. Jerry Briscoe was furious. He didn't know. Dutch was pretty upset. I remember
Those are three guys. Those are three guys. Like Dutch can go too, but Jerry Bradshaw. And well, Dutch, I mean, Dutch probably be like, "Yeah, it's up to you guys." I'd be like, make it a tag." But I would be like, Terry Briscoe, I'm surprised he wasn't trying to literally rip people's arms off from over the barrier.
I guess they were kind of were. So apparently there was a safe word to get rid of the ECW guys when the job was done, and the safe word was Bockwinkel. So
Pretty safe wrestler, pretty safe word. Brad
classic.
Armstrong would be my safe word. You can't get safer than Brad Armstrong.
Then the following night on Raw, Taz jumped the guardrail with the bright orange sign that said, "Sabu fears Taz," and he injured a photographer who got in his way. He broke his shoulder.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Was it one of the official photographers, or was it somebody that came to the ECW shows?
I don't know. No, so I don't know. This is just some dude on Raw, and apparently Taz's instructions from Paul was, if anybody gets in your way, get him out of the way. So he ends up shoving a photographer. He falls badly, broke his shoulder as well. So, but that was
got him out of the way.
Raw after. Yeah,
got him out of the way. But I'm saying, like, I don't recall seeing like Eric Rosen or this guy Tim, or like anybody who came to the shows that they would know. But I would assume there would have to be some kind of lawsuit or something like that, unless they're such a huge wrestling fan and they thought it was like Bruiser Brody or Abby beating them up in Japan. It was like a badge of courage,
Yeah. Free T-shirts, or is that just if you set on fire?
The fire. I mean, you got the scale of it. Maybe we can do a tier list of what free merch should you get depending upon the injury or the violence or the burn, the degree of your burns.
Yeah. If it's a broken shoulder, maybe a bag of balloons and a pencil. If it's been set on fire, 3 T-shirts. If it's kind of like some kind of paralysis, maybe like one of those like Ribera
You get a
jacket style
1 month
things.
subscription to ESPN to watch pay-per-view.
Yeah, why not? There you
I was
go.
gonna say that Taz back down and be like, brother, you got another shoulder.
Dude, Taz, get in touch. Let us know. Let us know if that ended up being like a lawsuit or something. I'd love to know about that. Let's go to Paul Heyman and Vince McMahon. So, as you said a couple of times, alluded to already in the episode, you knew something was going on with Vince and Paul, and no one was quite sure. And obviously, Paul wasn't mentioning anything. So, Shane
But first of all,
Douglas.
I'm not claiming
Oh,
to
yeah.
know anything. I'm just claiming that I had an instinct and I was maybe I was too young not to turn around to a couple people and say something to be shushed right away. Not the Chad Gable one, but that look of you better don't even like when you were making fun of my Rocky Project Hail Mary 3D print, and I was like, shut your damn mouth. That was pretty much the reaction I got.
So Shane on our old podcast, University, what the hell was it? Franchise University with Shane Douglas. He said this, that he was also getting the inkling. He just knew. And also he was like, you need to be, because you know Shane's position, he's not a fan of Vince, of course.
And by the way, this is gaslighting before gaslighting was a term. We were all being gaslit to think this wasn't a cooperative effort.
Gaslighting as a term was invented in the 30s.
I know,
Would you
but we
believe?
weren't
Isn't that
saying it
amazing?
as
No,
I
I know.
feel young when I say it.
So anyway, he actually gave this advice to Paul. In fact, before I say this, Paul received a phone call from Vince and he put him on speakerphone. Whether it's a landline or whatever, I don't know. And it was Vince on the call and other people overheard it, and so did Shane. And Paul, apparently, according to Shane, made a beeline out of the room and took the phone with him because he didn't want anyone to know that they were in touch with each other. So this really was clandestine. Afterwards, Shane said the following. This is a quote from the podcast. There is much more than meets the eye with this situation, but when Vince doesn't need you anymore, he will stab you in the effing back and leave you on the side of the road. So obviously Shane, more than anybody else, I guess, in that locker room, was more than wary about working with Vince at that point.
Yeah, who would blame him? Who would blame Shane to any point about that? And his instincts for that are pretty clear. But then again, like ECW needed that WWE and whatever subsidy. How long was the deal? And do you know the amount, the exact amount that Paul was getting per week? I know there was talent exchanges, and then you mentioned the Too Cold Scorpio stuff that there was payments. There's always been some kind of subsidizing of ECW from WWE. That's what I don't know how far it goes back, but much further than anybody guessed.
96, I believe, Vince was subsidizing ECW to the tune of $1,000 a week because that was covering. So when Vince brought over Too Cold Scorpio, Scorpio was attached to him a sponsorship from Tommy Boy Records, and when he did his entrance, thank you to Tommy Boy, blah blah blah, for allowing us to use this music. The only people who are allowed to use, allowed to use their music, I guess, in ECW. Everyone else just got their music used without permission. But that was the $1,000 a month. Then in 2000, supposedly, Vince
a week,
McMahon
right?
left.
Not a month. A week.
That was a week. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Did I say a month?
I just wanted to make sure. Yeah.
Yeah. No. There's one thing a month happening as well. So Vince lent in 2000 Paul Heyman $500,000 to keep the lights on, which he didn't, of course. So the theory going with that is that this was almost Vince's way of, one, keeping like a feeder system going, two, he wanted the videotape library. So this would be a good way to, you owe me money. If you don't pay it back, I want so-and-so as an exchange kind of thing. And also it's good business. Toward 2000 as well, if I can find, I'll get to the talent exchanges.
Well, wait a minute. $500,000. That opens up, just to insert real quick, that opens up a whole nother theory as to why Paul Heyman went to WWF to work there. What was it, just a forgiven $500,000, or did he agree to work and then some of his contract would pay off that loan?
Eventually, so I understand, is that Vince forgave that debt.
Wow.
So,
He's been, Vince gets a bad rap for rightfully so for a lot of reasons, especially now in 2026. But he's hard to figure out. There's certain with things he's super greedy about and super petty, and then there's things he's just super generous and he just rolls off his back and whatever. I mean, there's that famous story about the GoFundMe thing and with Chris Candido or some kind of donation for and then a 1099 was sent out. Is that true?
I
I've heard
what?
it.
What? I, I don't get it.
I heard there was some in connection to a funeral, and then Vince donated money, but then there was a 1099 sent out for the some of the donate. I don't know. I've heard that throughout the years. This
I
this
if I've read that, I don't remember it. I've got Johnny Candido's book behind me, so I'll search for that as well. Back to the Vince and Paul financial and other arrangements. Jim Ross also claimed that Vince loaned the money to Heyman with the potential exchange of the library. But Ross also claimed that Heyman was getting an extra $50,000 per month from the WWF. Not sure if JR was conflating the loan with that money, but 50 grand. If not, the WWF were paying him an extra $600,000 a year just because, I guess. But at the very least, he gave him a huge loan that he never actually called back on from Paul. So Heyman also said in a USA Network executive showed him an email from Vince in 2000 telling the USA Network that they would lose a great resource if it refused to do business with ECW and Paul Heyman. So this relationship, I don't know if just Vince saw the value in ECW or if Paul and Vince were really tight and we just don't know it. What do you think about all this?
I honestly don't know what to think. It could be both. Could be a mixture of both. I don't know what percentage on one end or the other. Vince, like I said, Vince is very bipolar and very weird when it comes to a lot of things. And for some reason, he saw a lot of clarity with what ECW represented as far as a feeder system, potential talent that he could get, our developmental type thing, or an exchange, a place to send people like Brockus, who never really panned out, but also Al Snow reinvented his gimmick and character and revitalized his career. So I think Paul, or should I say Vince more accurately, saw it as maybe what they do with NXT now on a much larger basis. This person goes there, gets over, hopefully comes back. I don't know. And then maybe Vince just had some kind of, I don't know, he liked Paul maybe. And that might be all that makes the difference in forgiven loans, subsidized salaries, whatever it might be. I have trouble believing that Paul was getting 50,000 per month, maybe per year under a contract or whatever. But 50,000 a month, I would assume Paul would really put a good deal back into the company and we wouldn't be under the financial stress we are. I don't know. There's other things that the urban legends about gambling and all this other stuff that quite honestly, nobody can really confirm.
That's a story for another day is where the missing money went to that we don't
It
fully
didn't
know.
go into the BWO salaries.
No, maybe like it didn't even go to the ink for the printer for the contracts. You know where it came up with like how much you'd earn.
Yeah, maybe it's flying over Texas with the checks and like, the FedEx number, like, hey, you're one short. I just fill it in with anything.
Mm.
That is a real story, by the way.
There would also be talent exchanges in 1997. So you'd have Rob Van Dam, Sabu, Chris Candido show up on WWF television up until about June. And then there was even going to be a planned ECW match between Dreamer and Sandman versus, who am I saying, Rob Van Dam and Sabu at SummerSlam 97, which ended up getting scrapped because Paul Heyman basically had a fallout, or they couldn't agree politically to the winner of the Rob Van Dam versus the Roadie on a WWF RAW in June. And after that, it kind of just the relationship fell apart. But I think Paul Heyman was like, dude, he's on the bottom rung of the WWF. Why can't Rob beat him? He's one of my top stars. And I think the WWF side were like, well, we're WWF guys, we're better anyway, and whatever else it might be.
Our least over guy is still better than your most over guy. That's kind of exactly what they're saying. That was when they did the Mr. Monday Nights stuff with Jerry Lawler and Van Dam, right?
Yeah.
Really good stuff, man. And in Rob, I can't. I can't say that that match wouldn't have been awesome to have at SummerSlam. That would have been a really, really good man. Maybe that's what they also do good, but don't do too good. You know, you got to see, we didn't have that. We didn't have that type of mentality of save it for the fourth or fifth match. If you're first through third, you can't do everything you can do. And if they, I would assume they're putting them on the first three matches on the pay per view. And that might have been another thing politically, the talent looking and saying, well, they're going to do everything. What are we going to do after that? So it would have, and this is a tale as old as time. The thing that it brings up when you talked about who goes over, what happens, our bottom guy's better than your top guy, Super Clash 3, where all these promotions came together and they couldn't agree and talent was being, they were trying to steal talent and all this stuff and who goes over. Remember, we talked about that. That was a nightmare. So maybe it's best it didn't go all the way to SummerSlam.
Was that the Lawler Kerry Von Erich
Yeah,
one?
yeah, where he bladed before he even got to the ring.
Yeah. Was there some issue with his foot in that match as well? I can't remember. I know there was one issue where at some point Kerry, after he lost his foot, like his prosthetic ended up doing a 180 at some point during the match. I can't remember which one
I didn't know
was.
that. I know he had the problem from the motorcycle accident. He had part of his foot amputated. That was where he was with WWF, though, right?
No, that was years prior. That was Dallas time.
Oh wow! So he went to WWF as Texas
with
Tornado
one
with
foot.
that.
Yeah.
Would have never known for the matches he had with like Mr. Perfect and all the other people.
So Shane also argued that keeping ECW around, if Vince hadn't just bought them up in bankruptcy, would have been beneficial to the WWF after the bankruptcy. If Vince had secretly bought them out and then had just allowed Paul Heyman to run it, so you can funnel talent to the WWF for years to come. Like an unofficial feeder system kind of thing. I'm sure a lot of people would agree on that, but also you weren't there at the end. I understand that with Paul, but a lot of people were saying that in 2000 he was kind of checked out at that point and he was spending less time at the shows and whatnot. I'm just wondering if it would have worked beyond 2001, I guess.
I don't know. But when they brought it back in 2005, or 2005 or 2006, when did they bring it back?
It was a weekly show, 2006.
Yeah, it didn't. There was the same sort of the same Vince or around that as 2000, and of course WCW being bought, all that stuff. It would definitely serve WWE to have ECW like that, but the boys would have been so much more suspicious if checks are not being sent out, checks are bouncing, nobody's getting paid for weeks or months. We're cutting down on the shows. Then all of a sudden we have an influx and we're running like a full-time promotion with house shows and TVs and the production has jumped. That's going to be that's going to raise everybody's antennas with that. Not a bad thing, but how can you push the us against them when them owns us and then we're just kind of whatever. It would have maybe changed the dynamic. Did I ever tell you that I had a conversation with Paul, and this is after all the stuff, and I was doing the right to censor, that show, I think it was the last pay-per-view at Hammerstein, and it might have been CW versus Tommy in the I Quit match that I offered because we weren't far away, I think. We might have been at the Garden or might have been somewhere close, that I wanted to come and interfere with that match and kind of tie up the loose ends and have Dreamer kind of take me out as right to censor Stephen Richards. And Paul thanked me and said, but we're fine. But I was just trying to kind of extend the olive branch and get some kind of closure on our heat with that, which carried over to the new ECW. No, it might have made him even madder that I made that call. Who knows?
Just to go back to the beginning point, when did you first suspect the Paul Vince secret relationship?
Well, the inkling or the birth pangs of that were the ECW invasion of Raw and having us on the show and everybody. There was something said to be like, now they were side-eyeing us. It wasn't everybody, but it was kind of something like if Vince had said, we're working with these guys, I kind of got that impression looking at the way that the locker room treated us. And of course, we're performing, we're doing all these things, we're showing up. And to me, being immature, not really knowing how to interpret it, but still my instincts kicking in of, I think there's something going on. And even I think there might have been a brief sidebar with Vince and Paul. It's like, oh, they're not the enemy. And then on the way out, I mean, this can fit in anywhere. On the way out, I swear it was so funny that we didn't have to line up, but we were lined up because it was such a thin hall or narrow hallway. Vince was standing there and everybody was like aligned with the Pope. Everybody was shaking his hand and thanking him for the opportunity. And he was like, you did great. And he called me Stevie Ray again. I was very, very touched by that. And then called me Stevie Ray. That's a big joke between Stevie Ray and myself, by the way, to this day.
Why do you
'Cause
call him Stevie Richards?
We're twins. It's the way it goes, man. Don't fire my brother, Stevie Ray.
So let's get to Jerry Lawler, who is a big part of all this on screen and kind of, I guess, a little bit off screen as well. He is kind of pegged as the anti-ECW guy, who was the one who challenged you all to come over and whatnot. He calls the company extremely crappy wrestling, which still permeates to this day. I don't know why. It's just it works for whatever reason. And then there was also the line that he gives Taz that he looked a lot bigger on the Lucky Charms box. Quote.
Well, he also
from
said he
Joe.
bought a second home, an anthill as a second home.
Did he?
Yeah,
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
I quote, I had heard about ECW before, and honestly, what I'd heard was not necessarily fact. I spent most of my career in the Mid-South area, and we had a little world of our own. The only thing we heard about the other promotions was stuff you'd see in the wrestling magazines. So honestly, at first glance, I thought this was just a group of misfits. I thought these were guys who couldn't catch on with the major organizations, cast-offs. I found out later that wasn't necessarily the case. Now, Heyman had hated Jerry Lawler for like a decade at this point, because back in the 80s, 87 or wherever it was, Heyman was briefly in Memphis. He was managing Tommy Rich and Austin Idol, the two big heels in the Memphis area at that time. And they were building up to a scaffold match. And on the day of the scaffold match, Lawler says, right, and then you're going to go up on the scaffold, and then we're going to do this, that, and the other. And Heyman says, I'm not going up there. I'm terrified of heights. And Lawler was like, we've built this all around you getting your comeuppance. Why are you only telling me this now? So anyway, Jerry Lawler broke his jaw, or at least punched him really hard in the face. He broke Jimmy Hart's jaw.
I was going to say, he's broke a few jaws down there in Memphis, and Jimmy Hart was one of them.
Yeah, Jimmy Hart was definitely one, but he definitely punched Heyman in the face really hard. So they weren't happy, is the answer. And I don't know if, especially with Lawler going to ECW as well, what was the relationship with Lawler and Heyman at this point, if you ever found that one out?
I never found that out at all. I mean, Cornette went in there the same night as Lawler with the lights off, lights on. So Cornette and Paul have their thing. There's a famous picture of them kind of laughing together at OVW backstage, but it was touch and go with that as well. And you know what? Lawler is right. We were a group of misfits, cast-offs. That was the charm and the drawing power of the characters in ECW. You know, we didn't think like, well, let's see how this translates in WWF or WCW. We're just trying to make a name for ourselves. And to be honest with you, I think Perry and other people would say Tommy, Raven, never really quite fit in anywhere. So ECW was literally just cast off Island of Misfit Toys. How many times have you heard anybody from the company refer to us as the Island of Misfit Toys? All the time. So Lawler was right. But that was not a negative to us. That was a positive.
What's interesting is that practically everybody on that Manhattan show would be hired by the WWE at one time or another afterwards, including you and Perry and Taz and Raven again and Sabu and everybody.
Yeah, and even Mikey Whipwreck went to WCW. Other people, were able to be signed. Then you had Doring and Chetty. The people on Team Taz were workers in the school, the House of Hardcore. So everybody has touched or stayed and spent time in all the major organizations, and that includes TNA as well during the weekly pay-per-views. The ECW guys were pretty influential in a lot of promotions.
Anything else to add to Lawler? Because I was saying this on the Patreon, is that before the match that you have with Nunio and afterwards, you're right, you and Meanie are right in Lawler's face saying whatever it is. Do you remember what you were saying to him? ECW rules or whatever it might be.
No, I didn't say a word because I knew nobody would hear me, and I was blowing up at the end, so I just pointed at him. I think everybody just did that because it was such a big deal. There was nobody pointing at, out at us to say, go to Lawler or do this. We just knew Paul was on commentary. I did at least. So I'm going to do whatever I can and try to get Vince to say something. And then obviously Lawler, which kind of, if I thought about it again, I would ignore him because I have nothing to rebut or say something to him. So he's calling me Bean Paul, technical difficulties in the ring, blah, 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 whatever it might be. It's literally a one-sided fight. No, he's getting to win every round of that. So it was a mistake if I look back on it years and years later.
We're going to be talking about the show or the matches next week. We're going to be talking about the Eliminators, actually going through your match. We're going to be talking about Sonny and whatever else is on. There's a weird interview with Ken Shamrock in the audience, I seem to remember. I've not got that far into the show yet, but I know I watched it. Not.
Can you imagine if Shamrock was in the audience? We're coming through the audience for our match, and Paul had said too, just get to the ring, make sure nobody's in your way. Imagine get out my way, Ken Shamrock. He just starts choking me out. I don't even get to the ring.
It'd be funny if Taz gave Ken Shamrock a broken shoulder. If they're in the way, get him out of the way, brother.
Unless it's Ken Shamrock, then you wait for him like an elk up there, like in Montana or Wyoming. You just wait for him to cross. Don't do anything.
I added this to the format, and this is actually just after the Raw, but I don't know where else I was going to throw this in, really. And it's a report that Shane Douglas and the Sandman had a fight backstage. I can either mention this or I can just cut it out, but do you know anything about this?
I only know about this because of what happened when Sandman gave me that really bad stinger. Actually, I think that's right around this time. Where was the fight? Was it Lulu Temple? Or was
I'm going to give you
Syracuse? Because he gave me a stinger on the way out. He hit me in the back of the neck. This is before the guardrail. I think it was the week before or 2 weeks before. And Shane went nuts. And that was after their initial argument, which I think was Lulu Temple backstage.
It says on the second paragraph, this week in Scranton.
Scranton. Dude, they might have got into it more. There might have been a string of disagreements.
Shane Douglas and Sandman nearly got into another fight with the heat stemming from last week. Let's just say that every version of the story I get from eyewitnesses differ from the other, but the basic consensus is that last week when Brian Lee and Pitbull number 2 broke a table, Douglas, who was the promoter of the show backstage, said they should be fired. The word got to Lee, and when Douglas found out, he was screaming about the stooge who told him and how the dressing room had stooges, and that's what's so bad about the WWF. Anyway, when it came out that Sandman told him that two pretty much started to fight, and the guys broke them up. Douglas and Tracy Smothers also nearly got into a fight stemming from all that. This week in Scranton, PA, on the 4th of April, they did an angle to injure, quote, the Sandman, who wasn't going to work because of his cracked ribs, and in the angle, Douglas used the Sandman's cane on him. Sandman was mad because somebody else was using his gimmick, and backstage the two were about to go at it. At this point, the different versions of the story differ. Once again, this is Dave Meltzer writing. And it was that they were first held apart, and for whatever reason, some of the guys acting at Peacemakers said screw it and wanted to see them fight. Todd Gordon and/or Sabu, or Pitbull number 2, were the ones who pretty much broke the thing up when it looked like it was going to happen, depending on which version you hear. Neither guy backed down, although with 1 week to go before a pay-per-view show, the intelligent thing in this situation would have been to avoid the fight, since it would be stupid to risk an injury before the most important show in company history, especially for Sandman, who has never been on a show this big and is already going in with cracked ribs. Paul Heyman spoke to both, he was elsewhere in the building when all this was going on, and got them in a room together for a long time, and they talked everything out. So, simmering tensions for weeks between the two, apparently.
Yeah, I do remember the scope of the whole thing, not event for event or the location, but I remember because when I got the stinger, I believe that was Syracuse. It was the week before or 2 weeks before the Buffalo thing with the guardrail. But I remember that Shane was very angry about that. It cooled down quick. It wasn't like he was in Hack's face or anything like that. Now, I do remember that there was some heat between them going in to the home stretch of the pay-per-view. But I had no idea, by the way, on a side note, I give Sandman all the credit in the world. He never told Terry and myself he was going into the pay-per-view with cracked ribs. He never said a word. And his work didn't really, like, he was taking stuff, the ladders on top of him and everything like that. Never even sold it, as far as not in the ring, but outside the ring, never sold that. So the time of this and everything, I just remember saying that Shane was also really, really complaining about how dangerous Sandman was with the cane. He had meanie across the face a few times, like this, baseball, swinging it. The thing with me and right at the base of the back of my neck, that kind of stuff made Shane speak up on that. So I don't know if they settled it, but there was still tension. Shane still had his opinion of Sandman as a reckless worker and with the cane with that. And I would say, just to be fair about it, when you think of a heel Shane Douglas was trying to take Sandman, a babyface, out, like for good or injure him, that the biggest insult is to use his own weapon against him. So psychologically, that actually fits in very well to insult the babyface on top of injury with his own weapon.
There's, I'm sure, some interview I'm drawing on the back of my head where I think the Sandman's issue was with at one point that maybe Shane had moved his stick in the ring, and if I'm remembering it rightly, it was that Shane picked up the stick and then looked at it and then
No,
like kind of
you're right.
sneered and then dropped it.
It was like the stick's not worth using. It's not a viable weapon or whatever. That I do remember. It wasn't hitting him. It was like he looked at it and said, "This is stupid," and kind of threw it down, right?
Yeah, something like that. And I think afterwards, Sandman said, I would have rather him used it on me than kind of sneer at it
Oh,
or
so I
look
got
down
that
on my
wrong. He
gimmick kind
didn't
of thing.
use it on him. Yeah, I can't.
I'm trying to think. I think
Because
maybe that's the story.
I've used that cane in some ways more than Hack did during that time. I mean, when we got a hold of that thing after cutting the string, we were like, "It's go time." Meanie Nova and I used to fight each other to hit him with the cane. We'd be shoving each other like heels on that cover when you take the heel off. We were doing that as baby faces.
Do you remember in the lead up to Barely Legal that tensions were just higher in general? Is this just a microcosm of a bigger problem that the locker room's all really stressed out about this because it's all gearing towards one great big show that's been? I mean, how many times was it cancelled? I mean, it was meant to happen in '96. I know that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, but when it did happen, it was the perfect time. And of course, doing that ECW Invasion of Raw was a great boost going in there. I guess we were holding our breaths. Like, now that we did this, if it gets canceled again, then we're kind of really dead in the water. But no, I remember there was immense amount of pressure, but I think there was a fear too of protecting how should I say, not the integrity, but the spirit of ECW, where it was a team-based atmosphere. And maybe everybody was worried with that taste of that people were gonna, which did happen, right? Where people were gonna start looking for the paycheck, for the contract, for the big, the big lights of the TV promotions. I think that's what made everybody, maybe even especially Shane, on edge. That I know what it's like there, and I have a feeling people are gonna be tempted and we're gonna lose guys due to the fact that we're kind of going mainstream.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's an interesting point. Do you think any of the ECW faithful were kind of, I don't know, slightly turned off with the WWF collusion? Because it's not,
Turned off by it? Well, you'd have to be, because Paulie has really, really fostered and cultivated the us versus them, that we're on an island of misfit toys all by ourselves, that the whole wrestling world is against us and doesn't want us to make it. Now, I'm telling you right now, there were people going into the pay-per-view, Raven and other people that were saying, this is a way to get back on the radar and maybe get these two companies to bid and really get a great deal out of it, which really did start to happen.
Do you know the one great big shame, to bring it back, is that in both of these invasions, you weren't at the second one where they had the verbal battle, Paul Heyman and Jerry Lawler. The real big shame of this is that Shane Douglas was not involved. For reasons we know, because he hated Vince, he didn't want to go there, I'm sure. They didn't want to bring him over either at that point either, because he was very volatile. But he was the only guy who could match Paul on the microphone at that time. But also, he's a wrestler. He was the kind of face of the company, really. He was the wrestler of the company for years. It's a shame that he wasn't there.
That's like the biggest misstep that I wish they could have worked out. But man, the feelings, it's a double-edged sword. The feelings were so raw. And that story Shane tells about at the Garden with the commission doctor, with him possibly being paralyzed, and then Vince telling him to get his effing stuff and don't ever, his effing services aren't required anymore. Is that kind of what he said? He was getting on the elevator and then Arnold Skaaland kind of stopped it and said, well, he didn't mean it. He wants you to come back. And that's where Vince said, why don't you cut one of those shoot promos you're so famous for? Like, it's still being a jerk to him. It's crazy. But would you want to go back and work with a company that did that to you, that didn't care whether you lived or died, whether you're paralyzed or walked again? Shane's a very honorable guy. I think even if they offered him a ton of money at that time, he'd be like, thanks, but no thanks. Because once again, getting back to the in your house mind games thing, you don't know if you're being set up. At the very least to fail, at the very most to be kind of taken out.
Okay, then. So that was kind of the preamble, really, the build up to the WWF Monday Night Raw invasion, as it were. Next week, we're going to be talking about the Eliminators. Sonny, of course, we're going to be talking about Stevie's match as well with little Guido, where there's quite a few little Easter eggs that are involved with that as well, including that you injured yourself during that match somehow, which is kind of amazing. Yeah, the WrestleMania 3 rings, as you call them.
Yeah, I don't think people are saying, oh my God, it's so out of pocket. I've never heard Stevie Richards injured during a match before, but the way I did it is, yeah. And you can see me afterwards just kind of crawling because I knew I had a spot with Raven after that. That's when Stevie Ray was drop kicked outside the ring and I was part of the popular clothing line, NWO.
Yes, a pastiche on the popular NWO clothing line there.
Vince is going to Vince sometimes.
Can't
That's
help
what I
it.
say.
Do you know what? Do you know what it is? Vince is going to Vince. That's fine. When he infects other people and they start doing it as well, that's when I find it a bit.
You don't think there's some yes men there that are just going to say, yeah, that's a great clothing line that doesn't exist anywhere else?
Anyway, New World Order, the clothing line, by the way. It's kind of like the Bullet Club clothing line, available at Hot Topic or wherever it was. I don't know.
It was Hot Topic, yeah.
It was Hot Topic.
Yeah, along with the Royal Rumble T-shirt that we discussed a few weeks ago.
Outrageous, that one, wasn't it? Titus O'Neil finally getting his flowers.
Oh, by the way, speaking of getting flowers, big thank you. We didn't say it in the opening. We were featured on the most recent, at the time of the recording, Botchamania, which they were very kind to us and put us over because they had that little thing that pops up on my right to censor with the sign that says, didn't get all of that. But that was our clip where we were talking about what YouTube channels we watched. So we were talking about Botchamania and they put that, and it was a hashtag with no mercy that says, always be my big show or always my big show or whatever.
Forever my big
Right.
show, whatever it is.
Forever my big show. There you go.
There you go. It's because you said, "Oh, you've been, or the show had been featured in Botchamanias as of recent." And I didn't know what you meant, and then I tuned into the most recent one, and you really were featured in that one.
Oh, they were featured most heavily on that. But here's the offer to Matthew out there: we will do an opening for Botchamania in the future. Just let us know what you want us to say.
Okay. Stevie will. I can't imagine that I've got any cachet in this. No, it's that guy who ruins the shows.
Well, where Taz's thing where he comes out from the Oompa Loompa thing during Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, I want it to be Peanut Shell with you with the monocle and everything.
Just coming out of a big peanut shell kind of thing. What if you're on the Lucky Charms box and then like somehow you like jump out of it and say, hey, I really am bigger than on the Lucky Charms box or something like that.
Oh,
be
my
another
God.
Taz reference.
Well, Taz and I get along. We talk about infrared saunas and stuff, which we're going to get you one soon. Don't worry.
I would like.
Don't you worry.
Well. Oh yes, we'll be plugging those bad boys if we can get a free one. I'd love that. Nice barrel one, as you said before, and we want Or you said electric with the option to have the water poured.
Yeah, don't pour the
Because
water on the other ones that don't
no,
have the
no,
stoves.
pour water on the
I'm like,
electric. Dude, I've done that once, you know. Like my wife was just like, "What is your problem?" It's like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "Why did you wash?" Like we were gifted like for Christmas a hot chocolate maker, you know, like a velvetized whatever it is, and I just looked at it and went and just put it in the dishwasher, ruined it.
you think because it handles liquid on some level, and then it can handle liquid everywhere.
Yes, that was my theory. I'm not even sure I thought about it that much. But anyway,
I'm going to tell her. I'm going to tell everybody that during our break, he wants to get he wants to get one of those barrel saunas. We're going to get one when we have a property we can put a yard. I have a company kind of in my back pocket that might send one, and then James usually like, nah, I don't know. I said, well, what if we just get you one of these barrel saunas and we can do like a sponsored ad? He's like, I've never seen him so excited in 102 episodes as when I said that.
yeah, but if you said something like, "Oh, I can get you some cereal," I'd be like, "But barrel sauna,
Like
yeah."
Lucky Charms.
Oh, we don't even have them there. The shipping would be ridiculous. Do we have them here? Maybe at one point, but like we don't have them here, unfortunately. That's
All right,
why
I'll work
the
on
whole.
getting. I'm going to work on getting you a sauna, boss, and then we can get back to the ECW show or the news. Actually, with this,
That's fine. I just want you to know that the Lucky Charms joke in Austin Powers didn't particularly work in this country.
oh,
It's a television commercial with Frau Bissner. Man, I could talk through that film. Like I could just do everyone's words.
I'm not dead. I'm still quite alive down here.
But I'm very badly burnt. And it also took me years to realize that was Will Ferrell.
Oh, it was. That's right.
There you go.
Well, people want us to start a gaming channel, not a movie review channel. So
That's
we
fine.
probably get back to the show.
I'd be terrible at movies. Dude, I've watched,
You'd
I
be like
think,
the
maybe
critical
two films.
drinker. That's who you remind me of.
The Critical Drinker. Which one's that?
Movie reviews. He's Scottish, though, I think.
Oh, is he?
It'll be fine. It's just...
I've watched like two films this year, and one of them was with Russell Crowe, where he was Hermann Goering. What's it called? It's probably just called Nuremberg.
I don't remember. I'm sure you sure as heck didn't see Project Hail Mary. So you got to see that.
What is it? A film? A TV
It's
show?
the space crab movie, as you would say, the one I showed last week with the 3D print.
Yeah, no.
It's awesome. Best movie in years.
Dude, I've had up to it with the space crabs, man. I haven't
All
watched
right,
anything
let's get
else
on.
about those
We got to get him happy again. Hold on a second. I'm going to say two words that'll make you happy once again because he started turning into James Romero. Barrel sauna.
Enjoy the sauna. Okay, yeah, well, let's move on. Vince McMahon. We haven't talked about him enough this episode. Is he going to return? That's the question. But the real story here is that Janelle Grant's legal team have now decided to go to arbitration, which is a kind of a massive deal because, like, especially with Dutch and I, we were covering this like crazy when it came out. We have new videos every week, like every bit of the case. If you want to know like what happened on a week by week basis, you can go on the Storytime with Dutch Mantel channel. We've got clips for every single week when new stuff would happen. So anyway, now it's kind of going to arbitration. You know, it's going to be a settlement that we won't know what the settlement's going to be. We don't even know if they're going to announce when a settlement's been reached. Probably they will. But, you know, Discovery is going to be very limited to public, if at all anything gets out from now on, unless it's part of another lawsuit, like the shareholders lawsuit, where the emails for Janelle Grant came out. We can talk about that if you want. But that's pretty much it for the case. At least
I was going
publicly
to say, I'm
speaking.
never going back to the company, so of course we can talk about it.
That's fine. I'll get the emails up in a minute.
There's like a 4.001% chance I might have a chance of returning to WWE. Let's make that zeros across the board today.
Yeah, well, you're never going to get booked again, as people keep reminding me.
I did get that text recently.
You afterwards, you're going to have to tell me who sent it.
I don't know if the 140th time is going to finally get through to me or not with this. I was going to say this. Let's talk about the overarching thing. Maybe people that are just like, what's this all about? God bless you, by the way, if you haven't been following wrestling for years. So you live a very full life, but especially when it comes to this. But I was going to say the 2022 NDA that she signed, she received $1 million, correct?
Yeah.
and she was supposed to receive a total of 3. So she would have owed 2. There's 2 million. I'm bringing this up for a reason, because in the strange world of like however many years, it feels like it's been going on for decades at this point, but how many years this has been going on, would it not be just insane if, it probably will happen, if the settlement, the arbitration that's confidential, turns out to be a settlement for $2 million? So she
Uh,
ends up getting the 3 million, like nothing changed, like in all these years.
well, you're joking, but I actually kind of think that's what it's going to be.
Wow.
Because look, like we're talking about $3 million, like it's not much. I know they all live in Connecticut, and it's a bit more expensive there than average. But 3 million is like FU money. Like you
No,
never
but it's
have to
death
work
you money
again.
if you're not giving the money to the lawyers. And she was going to get keep all the 3 million, but all this and Vince spending money and them, whatever percentage the lawyers are taking on her end, it's like we're just going right actually for her right back to a place where now maybe they'll figure it in and say, which is even crazier, let's get an amount to settle for where I end up with the original 3 million that he promised me anyway.
I suspect that the settlement will be for 3 million total, including the million she was given plus legal fees. I suspect that's probably what it'll end up being. But the thing with this is that it's so interesting that eventually Janelle has just and the legal team has just gone, and I'm figuring this is what it is. I just can't have this hanging over my head anymore. I just need this done. Because they were fighting this arbitration thing from practically the off, or at least for a couple of years. And then the day before they were going to go to court to decide whether it was going to be arbitrated or if it was going to be in federal court. And then the day before, it's like, do you know what? Let's just do arbitration. I'm tired. Because
And
I
isn't
thought
that
Janelle would
exactly
win.
what but isn't that exactly what larger entities like Vince, who have, billions of dollars, or any of these companies, isn't it really just waiting them out so that way they get tired, they get exhausted, and they end up just settling to move on with their life? That's
Yes.
that's kind of what we're looking at here.
Yeah, that is a very well known legal tactic. It's like when even people are being prosecuted in prison, but they're there on remand for years on end, and they often are the people who are dragging the case out on the basis that hey, witnesses' memories get foggy or people stop having such strong feelings on the case. It's just a waiting game in a lot of these cases to hopefully everybody's passions kind of die down a bit, and then you just want to take the path of least resistance.
Yeah, and then there's the weird, weird thing, and we're going to bring that up next. The weird, weird thing where wrestling fans and people are pining for Vince to come back to WWE, run the company, be on TV, whatever it might be, or all of the above. That there was a strange turn during this whole epic thing between them, between the both parties, that people kind of started to turn a little bit on her, and paired with the fact that they want Vince back to creative with WWE. Am I
Yeah,
off
I
base with that? It seems like there was a point where everybody's like turning a little bit on her and sympathetic towards Vince.
You can see that in the comments over the months and years. You can see it's nearly all for Janelle Grant. Then more and more people are feeling emboldened to like believe that Janelle Grant's completely lying. It was all about money. Obviously, if it's about arbitration, it is of course about money as well. No one's denying that. She wants the money she was promised. The arbitration thing's interesting because with the emails, and I won't go through them all, Janelle Grant says she's still got no idea who wrote them. I contend there's a theory, and maybe she hints at it as well, because it's claimed to be my friend. My friend worked at WWE, quote. That's the first line of the first email. She is redacted, and we live homeless for a while on perks, etc. So in the emails, it was alleged that Janelle Grant's friend had said that she was living with him and that they were homeless, that she was hooked on perks, she was in rehab. And Janelle was like, well, none of that's true. I don't know where that's come from, but it was never true. And then there was also like ages. Vince's age is a bit wrong. John Laurinaitis' age is really wrong. Janelle Grant's presumed age, she was like 25, the email says, when she was in like 40s at that time. It seems whoever wrote this was either purposely getting things wrong to throw people off the scent, or maybe more likely, someone who didn't really know her that well, but didn't like the situation or didn't like the company. sending these emails to the WWE board to get Vince in trouble. And I'm really fast now. The true question that we'll probably never find out is who sent them in the first place, because whoever sent them ended up being responsible for the company being sold and Vince being ousted twice. It's a huge piece of interesting news that we may never get a resolution from.
Well, how far back can they go to track an IP on the email and see where it came from? And I mean, there's ways to at least narrow it down. So what you're saying is literally, and this could be more people than people realize, somebody that felt slighted by the company, had an axe to grind, was witnessing some things, and decided, I'm going to send off these emails and maybe burn the whole thing down.
Maybe. Janelle Grant, in her replies to these emails, which there's 3, you pretty much know what's happening in all of them. I don't need to read them all out. But Janelle said, nobody who I knew pre-2019 would have known me during that time at work and would have known all these things about me. So she's kind of hinting it must have been someone in the company as well, or at least that's how I read that she's alluding
And everybody
to.
talks. You know, the gossip, and especially in a corporate building, there's going to be gossip. Everybody, you know, tell a WWE corporate employee, tell a wrestler, tell everybody, telephone, whatever you want to call it. So, yeah, they did. I feel like maybe we'll never know. I mean, she could have told somebody and thought it was just totally innocent, or somebody might have seen something that Vince and her were together in some way or whatever. I'm just speculating, but it literally could be somebody that they didn't realize from a third person perspective. You'd have to go and see, well, who left the company, who quit, who is on bad terms, who has an HR file, whatever it might be. I don't think it's going to get to that. I don't think we'll ever know unless that person, and if that person does come out, that person might be lying and just trying to get attention. Who knows?
There's other people in the board have suggested names that this who could have sent the email or who had an axe to grind or whoever it is. I'm going to mute myself while I say this, so don't say the name or anything like that or give a clue whoever it is. But that's coming up as far as like a grand mastermind of it all is Nick Khan. He may have sent the emails and also everything else to sort of turn the wheels. I've
Oh my
unmuted.
God, I can't believe it was Johnny Swinger that sent all those emails.
I knew. I told you
Well,
not to
he's
say the
never
name.
getting booked again.
He's never getting booked again.
It
Not
wasn't
by Vince.
Swinger. Don't get off the ledge. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. I used to
So-
love Swinger when we did motion capture for the video game, and I coined the term crash pad face because they would ask Swinger to take a bump on the crash pad, and he would. The only look that I can think of is it's kind of like when I start talking like in baby talk to one of my cats. For some reason, she snarls at me. She goes, that was the face he made, walking away from the crash pad.
Which game were you doing mocap for?
Well, I did mocap for a couple SmackDown versus Raws. I did Vince's entrance. I did Taker's. I did Kane's. We ran somebody over with a crash pad car in one of the cutscenes. It was a cool time.
Have you got any like backstage footage from that or images or anything?
No, I tried to stay in touch with the guy. His name was Ron, who was the producer, because he wanted me to do some voiceovers for some video games. But after that, it was just took on a whole new life. There was people making a living. It was like $2,500 a week with a $50 per day per diem. So, you know, I brought the shakes and the bars and saved the per diem too.
Dude, we need to do something on that as well.
But Swinger was, yeah, that's where Crash Pad face came from.
Right. New mission for you is to find out some footage, or if anyone has any of that, that'd be great to figure out. Let's get back to
It's Nova. Nova got us booked when he was in talent relations.
Do it then. Right. Teddy Long, quote, wants Vince McMahon back. Like, really bullish on it as well. Quote, this is to TMZ. Got a lot of talent out there now, and some guys are doing great and some guys are not. And it's based on the creative people, the people that are in charge of what you do out on that TV. That's how your career is based. I think what we've got to do, we've got to get Vince back so we can do this thing right and get the fans back on board. I don't think the chapter has ever closed with him. I don't know what happened or any of that stuff, but to me, in mind knowing him, this was his life. He loved this. I had a chance to ride on the plane with him, and one night he was on the plane, and as soon as we took off, he talked about wrestling until we landed. I have that Legends deal. So if they call me, I have to go to work. I'll do what I'm told, what I have to do. But if I had to go back, I wish it would be under the whims of Vince McMahon. And Teddy Long's not the only person, like John Cena, Mick Foley, some guys like that who are just outwardly still after all this, like total Vince McMahon boosters, I guess. But what is it about Vince that people just take up for him without, I guess, knowing the fact one way or another?
Well, it's obviously loyalty, and you're mentioning people that owe their careers to Vince. Let's not mix it up. These are two different things, but the loyalty factor with that, and obviously we're looking at a creative vacuum, we're looking at a promotional vacuum, and outside of all the stuff that we just discussed earlier and touched on. But yeah, I mean, it could happen if this thing settles and this is cleared up, unless there's other ones in waiting right now, then Vince could pretty much, come back at some point. Of course, that person that sent the email, it might still be in the company. There might be a third time with this, and who knows with that. But with that being said, there was also criticism of ripping up the script at 4, 5, 6, 7 p.m. and rewriting the show, and Vince kind of on a whim, whoever the last person it gets to him, that's what's done that night. There's all these little quirks with Vince too that kind of got a bit long in the tooth. So you have a quote from AJ where he talks about, I'll read AJ Styles' thoughts on working for Vince. Quote, I enjoyed the fact that if I had a question that needed to be answered, I needed it right then. I could go to Vince and he'd give me the answer. I can appreciate that. There was one time where I told him I was trying to read him, meaning how he felt about something. He said, don't do that. You can't read me. Maybe they've been true, but their things were different. I feel like guys walked around a little bit more timid when Vince was in charge, where now they can give their opinions and stuff like that more freely, ask questions without being yelled at. Well, that's like a two-part answer, because the second part is the part I remember, I wasn't so much afraid of Stephanie saying, Stevie, but, but if you ask Vince to, I was, somebody went into his office, asked him a question, and was gone for 7 months. So you take the good with the bad, I guess. Here's another thing. Is Vince still in touch? Because there was a big criticism on Vince being completely out of touch with modern culture, modern things, bringing that brand new hit band AC/DC with their brand new hit. Are you ready for SmackDown? There's lots of, it's very hard to stay in touch. I mean, we talk about how we try to do it here, Dutch tries to do it. There's different things. It's so hard to keep up with everything. So does Vince rely on younger people to do that? Does Triple H rely on younger people to guide him with this? There's a bigger overarching question about the creative direction of professional wrestling in general, even outside Vince. What say you?
Well, I was going to say, why do people clamor for Vince to come back? Let's say not on screen. Let's save that for later. But why do people want Vince back in a backstage capacity? Because, as you say, people were walking on eggshells. Dutch said when he went to Backlash, he called it Backlash, as you like me saying.
Backlash.
Backlash. A couple of months ago, he said, yeah, it was a completely different atmosphere to what I remember. Everyone was like way more relaxed, and it was just a happier place to be in the locker room than, when Vince was there, and everyone was, a bit more tense all the time. So, and also, wasn't Vince kind of just a giant detriment to the company, at least the last 10 years? Because as Killer Kross, we'll get to his quote in a while, there was no continuity when Vince was there. He just assumed no one would remember because he didn't remember. And he didn't remember because he's got a horrible memory, I guess. Surely he was a massive detriment to the company. The 2017, 18, 19 era of WWE was, what, the worst ever? Can we say that?
It wasn't good. And there is something about, you live long enough to become the villain. Triple H is in that chapter right now after the honeymoon period. The grass is always greener. Everybody's always looking for the face to change wrestling forever. And the face they're looking for is the face that changed it back in the 80s. So I don't know what the answer is. I know the answer is, and I'll tell you what, whether it's Vince or Hunter, Road Dogg, Bruce, Michael Hayes, I would prefer any combination of that over TKO getting their hands, their corporate hands into the creative, because now we have a whole new continuity problem that's like, well, I mean, yeah, we got this blood feud and everything, but how can Undertaker, before he says rest in peace, say, um, go drink some Wheatley vodka and then hold up the vodka thing before he holds up the urn? That's what we're dealing with, right? So I'd rather a wrestling creative take over no matter who it is, as opposed to the corporate takeover they have right now. I
You,
give I feel like Triple H could do an incredible job if he was left to do an incredible job. And I believe the example is definitely Undertaker and Triple A. That's the difference.
we will get to Triple H in a short while with Killer Cross's statements. With Vince, do you foresee him, after the arbitration's all done and dusted, a settlement has been reached, do you foresee him returning to the company behind the scenes or even on screen?
Can you remind me, what are we looking at in a stock situation, a control of the company situation? Is it even a possibility, or is it something that can be easily blocked by the current board?
It can still easily be blocked, but Vince McMahon still has over 5% of shares in the company. He didn't sell them all, if that's what you're asking.
What I'm saying is, like, back when they went public, the family still had control of the company, like over 50%, correct?
Right,
To where
okay.
they
They had more than 50%, very specifically, of Class B shares, which means they have 10 times the voting shares of Class A, which were
oh, the
available.
overstocks, Shug.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they were the over ones.
Yeah. So, as far as percentages, I can't tell you, but as far as influence and voting power, the McMahons always had that. Not anymore, though. But he still has some shares in the company.
Well, that would lend to the theory, too, of whoever made the phone call or the email, more specifically, that if they were anywhere in the orbit of control right now, that they could block him because he doesn't have the way to shoehorn himself in with controlling stock.
Well, there was the board members, because when he came back in 2023, he brought back George Barrios and Michelle Wilson, I think the names are, to basically be friendly board members to him to vote him back in, really. Because there were a couple of dissenting voices in there that weren't happy Vince was turning back up in January 23. I don't think they're there anymore. I'd have to check on that.
And the rumor was that some family members were also dissenting voices as well.
Yes, Triple H and Stephanie McMahon were not the Triple H, even in the text messages you can read, wasn't that happy that he was coming back, saying, he was anxious, D-Day, for Vince's return and also
That's a
TKO.
bad way of putting it, with all the wrestler named what's
Yeah.
everywhere.
Okay, so do you think Vince McMahon's ever going to, either way, do you think it's more likely they bring him back on screen, even if it was a cameo or even, hey, Vince is back, let's celebrate him? Or do you foresee, because my guess was Hall of Fame next year, Saudi Arabia, where he'll get a much more unanimous, rapturous reception, I'm sure, than he would in the States?
That's either going to be the beginning of an on-screen Vince McMahon, or the end of that, like bringing him back for like one last run up until the Hall of Fame induction. I was going to say this. It's not the worst thing in the world to bring back a Mr. McMahon authority figure that's
Mm.
not truly in control. You know what I mean? That he can follow that, be the Mr. McMahon, and maybe have the next, whoever it might be, maybe Cody or other people. There's a lot of story with Vince kind of holding certain people back that are now back with, better spots than Vince thought that they at the time. Drew McIntyre's one too as well. Chosen one, out of the company, comes back. There could be a lot of things that could happen with that. And then you have the John Cena with whatever tournament that is. We haven't heard about that.
It's the popularity contest tournament, is what it is. That's it. You just call up and say, I want so-and-so to win. Well, he got pinned. It doesn't matter. I even have a
Okay.
match.
I can't wait. We gotta do a live watch along of that.
Right. I'm going to come back to another thing because it kind of lends into it very well. I want to talk about Killer Cross and Triple H and his comments there. So this is the quotes from our Errol Hawani's show a few days ago as we record this. If I had to guess, this is him talking about Triple H no longer having a complete control on creative decisions within WWE. Quote, if I had to guess, I would say that there are people who call things in and he has to make the best of what they want to play out on television and the PLEs. That's just my guess. I base that on pattern recognition. That's a thing that has become very prevalent, especially with Gen Z. When it comes to entertainment, if you're creating something episodic with continuity, when continuity fails, there's a red light that goes off. People go, what happened here? Especially with wrestling, he said. Kross further opened up about the concept of Triple H's own booking style based on his knowledge of booking in NXT. Now, that there's new players involved when there's a failure of continuity and people don't like it, it removes people from the suspension of disbelief. That's entertainment. I don't think that's him being Triple H. He has his own patterns that I think were aligned with what the audience wanted to see. And that's speaking as a person who used to work for him, Kross added. And I knew when he could call all of his shots, and I had an idea of when he couldn't. To me, this looks like a situation where he can't call all of the shots, and I don't mean that disrespectfully at all. So, Killer Kross, to wrap that up there, is basically saying the booking isn't as good in WWE because I guess the corporate fingers are in too many creative pies with WWE, maybe more than we know.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. By the way, Killer Cross, I love watching what he's doing on the independents. I love his filmmaking and what he's doing, and I got to get his book and read it. Definitely, in all seriousness, a friend of the show, he talks about the clips he watches, and we do communicate. I didn't say that during his time in WWE, but if he goes back, he hates me once again and he buries me every chance he can get. I've encouraged him to do that. He was asking me one time, what's missing? I go, just publicly bury me to Hunter, and you should be in after that. But I don't give myself that much credit. I want to say this too. When we look at it with these comments now, not so much in a vacuum, but that episode of Unreal that famously or infamously Road Dogg was just exasperated and might have been the beginning of the end right there, of him leaving. It felt like Hunter and even Bruce to some point, or anybody in that meeting, especially when Hunter said stuff, Michael Hayes too. Um, it felt like it wasn't their own words. Like you're talking about pattern recognition. The way Hunter, it almost felt like they were muted. They were, the puppeteers had hit their hands up their butts and they were talking and repeating some corporate speak about somebody at TKO that felt a certain way about Chelsea Green and Alexa Bliss. And he's like, could you see that? It didn't feel like a natural opinion that was given. It felt like it looked like a hostage video. Everybody looked like they were like it's being taken hostage.
My theory on that is that everybody knows that cameras are on them all the time and they know it. And it will always change behavior to a point, whether it's you realize it or not. You can't be 100% yourself and act like yourself 100% authentic to you when you know there are cameras on you. So
Road
they're all
Dogg did for
there.
half a second. He stopped himself.
Yeah.
Road Dogg started to disagree and said, I don't disagree, but he wanted to, he probably realized, oh, they're filming this. I gotta.
Oh, no, no, no. There was Road Dogg in an interview said that there was more that they cut out of that, and he actually gave a pitch for what Chelsea could do next. So he wasn't out of ideas. He pitched, and then they still turned him down. But that's what it was.
Oh, they got me, brother. But there's no doubting in the few seconds he was on camera that he was over it. He was just like, oh man, and just gave up.
Why do what is it with people who buy companies and then think they know better? Like in a genre that they've really got no particular idea. I mean, like isn't wrestling one? You tell me if I'm wrong. Impossibly complicated to understand unless you've kind of grown up with it all your life, or been a fan of it all your life, or at least the majority of it, or and worked in it. And two, people seem to make it look more difficult than it actually is, or overcomplicate things more than they should.
Well, corporate America makes everything more complicated and more red tape than it always needs to be. I'll give you an example. We talked about Chase and myself working together on the tech and gaming channel, even myself with the fitness channel. These brands reach out, these companies, corporations, and say, we would like for you to create content, review the product. You have it's the old promoter thing. You're the greatest thing since sliced bread. Then when you accept it and you talk about money or the opportunity or whatever on your end, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. You haven't won a match in months. But these brands want you to do things, these companies, and there is a direct correlation. They trust your ability to do these things. Say Triple H booking, you're doing a great job, everything. But then when they get to, like, I guess, play God in a way, like, oh yeah, you can do this and this, but make sure you get the Slim Jim table. Make sure you do this. And you're like, it just no. We need, now it turns into Slim Jim table. Now make a match off the Slim Jim table. They get in their own way and they feel like, and guess what? Every TV executive, everybody in corporate America, you know what they're looking for? Just like in wrestling, by the way. If I give an idea to a booker, my main goal is not trying to convince the booker or the promoter or whatever to do the thing, but 95% of my energy is spent convincing the booker that it's their idea. That's all they care about, credit. But if it goes wrong, guess what? That was my idea. Mine, the talent, not that. I forced them to do it because I have all the power.
Do you think Triple H deserves as much blame as I guess a lot of fans do? Because I did a video on this not too long ago, and everyone in the comments was basically saying the same thing. Well, Triple H wants to claim all the credit so he can take all the blame as well.
Yes, there's something to be said for that. Now, objectively looking at it and what we just talked about, absolutely not. Triple H has bosses. Triple H has masters to serve creatively, or should I say more so? What was it? The people renamed it, by the way, not the Ruthless Depression Era, which is a great name. The AD, Attitude Era. All added. That was a great comment, by the way. But yeah, when you were kind of saying it wasn't his fault, those people they were almost 100% negative against you, kind of trying to be fair about it and say maybe it's not his fault. I'd have to go with you and say it's absolutely not all his fault. In other words, just like Vince, who would tear up the scripts and then just kind of figure out whatever he wants to do, I have a feeling Hunter's like, man, this is a really good show. It's 4 p.m. We just had our second production meeting. The phone rings. It's Ari Emanuel. It's Mark Shapiro. It's somebody in advertising for TKO and says, by the way, you have to create a match because we have a new sponsor. We already have a Road to WrestleMania going on. Nope, got to get the ad in. It's the Attitude Era. I can see that being what happens to him on a weekly basis.
I was thinking, like, people above Triple H who can, stick their opinion in whatever it might be, advertising or creative direction or whatever. And I'm not just talking about the Pat McAfee thing, which is a really overt thing that happened. And I'm wondering if there's like more micro changes from above. But you've got the entire WWE board. You've got Nick Khan. You've got The Rock, for example, who is on the board. You've got the TKO executives. And then you've also got network executives, not just one. You've got Netflix, you've got ESPN, you've got USA Network, you've got, are they even doing anything on Peacock still? They've even got A&E, who they've got programs, doing stuff for A&E as well.
Well, don't forget YouTube with the clips and other things they put up on YouTube. You don't know if they communicate with them.
Yeah, there are so many things and so many people and so many masters that they have to please. Hey, they could still do a better job, what can I tell you? But it's just interesting. Like, they've just overcomplicated to the point that, like, corporate wrestling never ever works long term. Whereas thinking, you want to bring up Undertaker as an example.
Yeah, Undertaker and Triple A is probably like, this is the way it should be. And it really is making it, and also we have to think not just in wrestling, but all these networks and the corporate element of TKO. What's the number one thing everybody wants to do? What's the number one goal? Not take chances, not try these things out, not see what works. Justify and keep your job. CYA, cover it. That's all it is. And it suffers. It really so it's like I know somebody. I was talking to Chase. He knows a friend of his that basically used to work on his own doing sports in the New Jersey area. Then one of those teams, I think, or one of the networks, I should say, said, "Oh, we would love to hire you and make you part of the team, bring your off, the whole, line to try to massage your ego." And now the dude is miserable because he has to cut through 17 layers of red tape. There's a media department. There's standards and practices or whatever it is to approve it. There needs to be a script turn in. Oh, you need to get this out. Everything is now so everybody's like this and there's no fun and it becomes very unnatural. Triple H definitely does not deserve all the blame and, in all fairness, doesn't deserve all the credit. So you just got to temper all that stuff. They definitely make it so much more difficult than it needs to be. And what you said, to the untrained eye, to corporate people, it's a super complicated, nuanced business. But once you're in it and you understand and have the experience and you're an Undertaker booking in AAA or anybody else, it's so simple. Why overcomplicate it? Can we find a happy medium?
Let's move on. Let's go to Hulk Hogan Cause of Death. Clearwater Police after like 10 and a half months or something like that. And I did read a comment recently, actually, and I want to bring this up as well. Maybe it was on Dutch's channel, where it said why it took so long is because Florida has got like the oldest population. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there's such a backlog, essentially, of cadavers, corpses that they have to go through that could be a reason why it took so long to get an official cause of death at Hulk Hogan. And I understand why the family or certain members of the family will be upset by the findings is essentially because they just said, oh, it's natural causes. That's how it is. How much do I need to go through like the preamble with you, or you know the story?
Well, could you? Because there was stuff coming out, and obviously Jimmy Hart sent that tweet out, I think, before he passed, saying he's doing great. He was with Nick at the karaoke and all that stuff, and then he passed. Now, there's a very interesting thing, and I would say I commend Jimmy for protecting his privacy as far as Hulk Hogan and the family. But there's been things like initially after that were kind of very fluid. I think that's the last time we talked about it, and we weren't sure. And then there was the whole Scientology stuff and the wife and other family stuff. It felt very complex at the time. Has that been all cleared up?
Well, no, not really, because Brooke Hogan said something to the effect of there was discrepancies with, like, we know he was on pain medication, but none of that turned up on the toxicology report, that kind of thing. So she's kind of alleging that there's some funny business somewhere, but then kind of what's the end game of lying about all this? I don't know. But then, if the wife has ties to other places that don't want certain things getting out, or it's a difficult process because I don't know if Brooke Hogan's trying to get back in with the family after disowning them and making sure that she was taken out of the will. But she's, talking about it all a lot as well. But to do a very basic timeline in about May, I don't have all the information in front of me because I can't find the damn information. I know I wrote it all down. I can't find it. Somewhere around May time, like he makes his last appearance like mid-May on the Ariel Helwani show, and he's plugging Real American Freestyle, Eric Bischoff and Izzy Martinez, and that's it. No one sees him again until he essentially he dies, and then there's phone camera footage of him on the gurney, I guess, after he'd already passed away, and the theory at the time was that he went through a surgery for his neck, and they may have been medical malpractice. There may not have been medical malpractice. He may have had his phrenic nerve severed, which kind of regulates breathing and diaphragm control. And he was very, very sick after this surgery. So that is kind of, at least that portion, everyone kind of agrees on that his health took a massive turn downhill. But also, as you said, Jimmy Hart said, he was doing really well a short time before that, and the karaoke thing. Ric Flair, the day after Hulk Hogan died, said, yeah, he was on street drugs. That's why.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I know. Let's never not forget about Ric Flair sticking his oar in and making things worse, like he always does. But that was afterwards. Oh, I probably shouldn't say this, but. And then, the family denied that was ever the case. There's so many different moving parts to it. All we can say is he had a history of steroid abuse. At times, he had a history of painkiller abuse, which he's admitted. Eric Bischoff has even said on my show that that was the case. He was physically battered and beaten up. He had had dozens of surgeries over the years. He was dealing with leukemia, kidney issues, pneumonia at certain points, something else as well. He was a really sick guy at the same time. And when you kind of put all that together, it's like, man, it's kind of surprising he lived that long because he
Yeah,
put
with
his
everything.
body, he put his body through a huge amount physically and chemically as well.
I was going to say, as you get up there in Florida, like you said, it's pretty much the oldest population in America, maybe even the world. Who knows?
That'd
Not
be
as far as
Japan.
health.
That'd be
Japan, but they're
Japan.
healthy. We watch the noodle shops, and yeah, I'm 100 years old, and I plan on going for another 50 doing this. Not the healthiest, is what I'm saying, but there is definitely some there. Now, here's the thing: what kills more elderly people than anything? It's that pneumonia. And right on top of that, when you have surgeries as you get older, even I'm almost 55, so I have to worry about general anesthesia. And what happens when you start going on? And Hogan's had dozens upon dozens of surgeries leading up right until the end. So you're talking about leukemia, you're talking about that nerve being severed during neck surgery, possibly pneumonia, and then just his body wearing down. And of course, we still don't know from steroid use, maybe growth hormone use, whatever, with that, what effect it had on his heart, on his body in general, on his organs. You're right. He was a walking miracle, and he still looked like he was working out and in shape. Isn't it insane? That's crazy. But yeah, I think everybody was just looking at it seemed sudden, so maybe that's where the eyebrows get raised up. But when you put all that in context, the guy since TNA was fighting health battles since TNA, I should say. So that's what, 2008, 2009?
2010, but he said on the Netflix
No, but he was getting
documentary.
surgeries before that.
Oh yeah. He said on the Netflix documentary that if he had could do it all again, he would have never wrestled after the WrestleMania 18 match with The Rock, or maybe shortly thereafter, that kind of run, and then he was done. Because like at the backstage behind the scenes footage from there is that he's in agony then. He's in agony in 2002. So you even think about, he was after the divorce from Linda, and he says he really went off the rails and, taking enough stuff to numb a moose basically every day and drinking whatever else. He was putting his body through a lot. He's putting his system through an awful lot. But it's interesting. I want to get just seeing him walk around backstage in TNA, physically speaking, you said that he looked like he was struggling.
Yeah, but he was getting those, like, I think he went to some place like the Laser Spine Institute to get the fixes on his back. And I saw him when he had the actual, whatever, electronic or electric device to shock his lower back. He was walking, that was permanently like inserted into his spine. I don't know what the technology or anything. I remember him showing it to me and I'm like, how can you wrestle with that? Like without tying it up, pulling it out, sweating on it and getting, I don't know if he wrestled with it or he could detach the outward box and just have the electrodes and wear that weight belt to keep it in. But yeah, he was struggling. But dude, just like WrestleMania 18, you watched the match with The Rock. He's not having to keep up with The Rock. They're right here. So you want to talk about the dude was hulking up before he went in through the curtain out to the ring. I think people can say we've had, segments about the many lies and this and that, but nobody's ever talked about how tough Hulk Hogan was to go through all that. And I do believe he was really looking out there going, I need to give the performance of a lifetime for the fans out here. I need to give them a memory. I need to give them, that's where the Hulk Hogan, the character, to give the fans what they want and leave happy was there 100%. Now, I don't know how he did it. Look at me. My back's about to go out now, and it feels like it's pulling me through the floor. But Hogan's looking like he's getting ready to go into a bodybuilding competition and barely able to walk. It's crazy.
Yeah, I suspect that if it's just put down to natural causes, because I think another thing with the occupational therapist who was there at the time Hulk died, he initially said he was like, I don't know if you call it an outcry witness to the media, but you know what I mean, someone who spoke to the media first. And he was saying, yeah, 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 the surgery went wrong. They cut his phrenic nerve, and then he kind of walked it back afterwards. And then Sky, I believe his wife at his final wife at the time said was that she was doing an exploratory lawsuit or almost like a pre-lawsuit to see if there was any merit to maybe bringing a lawsuit against the hospitals and the doctors who did the surgery on him. But it's just it's all very interesting that, the initial words and then it was taken back and, did he just stop breathing or did he have a heart attack or whatever it is? There's still questions unanswered. And I think what's an issue for Brooke, especially, and anybody else in the family, I'm sure, is then to put it down to natural causes when you really want a more definitive answer. This is what did it.
Like
No?
heart attack, pneumonia,
Yeah.
something like. See, that natural causes, when you describe all the other stuff, could be the most common sense conclusion, or with all that he could have died from, to end up being, no, it's this other one. In the Clearwater area, Clearwater Beach obviously has ties to, and his wife. These are all things that fuel the speculation. It could very well be natural causes, but everybody coming out, like you just said, even the tweet by Ric Flair that just was like street drugs, and you're like, what? It raises everybody's antennas. So, and even with, like you said, it's a very real possibility that they just were so backlogged with the amount of elderly or just general deaths to do autopsies on in Florida. But it adds to we can consider a kind of urban legend now. Like, what's really happening with all this?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think Brooke, what she said after this was released last week now, was, well, it should have been treated as a crime scene and everything should have been taped off. And it's like, no, it shouldn't. It was an older fella with a history of physical issues and illnesses, had a heart attack and died. That's not the kind of thing you tape off a street for. It's not like someone shot him, that kind of thing. But
Hey, but
it's
she's it's her dad,
yeah,
dude. It's her
I know.
dad. They're very emotional. You want some answer, some closure, and also, I don't know. Now you don't have the closure. And speaking of somebody with my own father, never got the closure before he passed. I can understand Brooke trying to deal with that, trying to figure it out, trying to rationalize it. Also saying, my dad just didn't die and we didn't reconcile in time. Somebody took him. It in a weird way doesn't make it any easier, but you're like, the blame is solely on the parties that didn't have the closure before passing if it's just natural causes.
Yeah.
That's such a maybe a deep cut within that, but you're trying to cope with maybe the fact that there wasn't that closure on a positive note.
Okay, I don't really have a good segue to get off the Hulk Hogan video, but we're going to go to a what went right and a what went wrong to finish off the show. The what went right was from WWE RAW yesterday, as we record this Monday for everybody else, because this is coming out on Thursday. And it is the opening segment, and this is the Bloodline, or pretty much the Bloodline anyway, with Roman Reigns, the Usos, and Jacob Fatu. So the story going into it is that Jacob Fatu is happy to acknowledge Roman Reigns, but not the Usos. And as a reward, Roman Reigns gives a version of the Ulafala, like a brown wooden one, not the red one that Roman Reigns wears occasionally, around Jacob's neck. And in the corner, there is a comedian. What's he called?
Eric Andre.
Andre.
There's a
Eric
famous
Andre.
there's a famous meme where he's on his talk show set and somebody just pulls out a GUN and boom. Like, it's a meme everywhere, for a long time. But yeah, Eric Andre hasn't, I don't know what he's doing. Maybe something with Netflix now. I have no idea.
So I think I looked it up. He was doing something with Adult Swim. Anyway, the point is he's in the corner and people are shaking hands. Roman Reigns shake hands, and then Eric Andre reaches over to Jacob Fatu and starts playing with the Ula Fala. And after that, Jacob absolutely mauls him. So over to you. What went right?
what went right is the entire bloodline became baby faces the moment Jacob Fatu peeled Eric Andre over there. They want to see celebrities just manhandled. And then, by the way, this reminded me, I was like, I wish Eric Andre called it Summerfest and did the Jeremy Piven. That would be awesome. But here we go, setting it up nice. I still love the fact that after this happens, you have Jimmy and Jay get out, and Jay's got that hedge dog. I love this. I'm always going to be a fan of Jay Uso. I know a lot of people aren't, but I love the fact that Jay just is the odd man out. I love the fact too that maybe this was completely put together, that everybody, like, it's almost like too predictable that Roman shakes hands, Jay shakes hands, Jimmy does, and then you got to be like, well, there's got to be something happening with Jacob. I thought this right here was going to be the deal that something would happen with Jay, and Jay would tell Jacob, get him, or whatever, like the M. Bison, get him. But this was done really, really well. And then you have Jimmy right behind. I love that look on Jay. Jay got himself in really good shape too. You know what's funny here is, rest in peace to him as well, but he just has such an Umaga vibe to him, doesn't he?
Mhm.
It just, yeah, and that's a compliment, that he can move like him. And yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't do that. That's tugging on Superman's cape. Eric Andre did not jump. he took a good bump, but this is like, he was taking a bump one way or another. So, and it looks like he's wearing like underwear. What's going on here?
Well, I'm sure he is.
Oh, is he on his way to Walmart after this? Really well done.
Yeah, absolutely everybody is.
Now that reminds me of Monk with Steve-O. Was that the guy Steve-O? Did he just got him manhandled?
Yeah, and Chris Pontius, man, yeah.
Wow.
Well, just go back. What? I missed it.
He did the Mortal Kombat, get over here. Watch the way he dragged him. Nobody's, you're going exactly where, there's no chance. There's no feeding here. There might be bumping, but there's no feeding. He's going to put him exactly where he needs him. Nice headbutts. Dude, Eric Andre, by the way, I don't blame him. He's red, like his face is red. The adrenaline and the gear has gone from first gear to eighth gear instantly. Good headbutts there. Now, he may have watched the Steve-O and the other celebrities that after whatever happened, or when Big Show body slammed one of the Tough Enough people and they just got up on their feet, they've been pretty much produced to say, stay down. Once you do that, just stay down. And what Jacob's going to do, look at Roman. I'm watching Eric Andre for a second. I thought was going to do the, like Steve-O, I think, did it where he just went like this, the whole, like, brace for the splash, which who could blame him? But man, I think also Jacob shoved down, was it Shane Helms that he roughed up after the first one?
I will see, because Roman Reigns sends him out for a second one. After the fans chant one more time, by the way.
Dude, that gets like the biggest pop of the whole thing when he tells him, do it. Yeah, do it again. Do it again. But you know what? People might say this is a tired old trope, but I love that they're trying to block him from splashing, and he technically kind of splashes through them, and they part based off of that. It's really well done. Oh, don't do it. This is where I'm going to mention TKO from the previous segment. You can't, but the corporate people are probably like, go ahead and splash him. Why are you taking so long? This and that. All these moments in the camera cutaways and the entire scope of this, and the people watching and seeing how Roman's going to react, who just did a friendly handshake, hug with Eric Andre. He stops him initially, And people are waiting for, go ahead and do it. And that's what's coming up. Yep, we're good. We're good. I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking, let's do it. Really great stuff. I love that right there. What's funny is with this, nice look. That's Stevie Richards smirk right there. What's funny about this is, like, they had the angle going on, the clash in Italy, the title match. Now they're back together once again. It's kind of interesting. You want to see where it's going. Do you think that's kind of neutered Jacob in a way, or do you think they're doing this stuff to make him a viable threat once again and more of a just out of control type character?
Dude, they're setting him up with Jay, which I think is disappointing because I think they've kind of glass ceilinged him. They've made sure to make sure that everybody knows that he's under Roman Reigns. At least for now.
Yeah. It's a good point. He got the consolation pepper necklace, as Ben Hameen would say. Think about it. He gave him one, but a different one, but it's not the one. So what is he? Yeah, it's a good point. It's kind of looking at him. Should I make him do it again? Yeah, I kind of made him do it. This isn't, Adam Pearce is so like beside himself, frustrated. This is not Austin costing WWF back in the day the Mike Tyson deal with Vince. They're trying to replay it like that, right? This is Eric Andre. Let's not get too crazy. So here we have him. Let's do it one more time. Make it a tag. He did almost like a Montez Ford, Rob Van Dam, where he kind of hit him like that knee or that thigh caught him right in the head. And there we go.
It's refreshing that a celebrity is just happy to be absolutely starched out there instead of trying to be like, on level with the wrestlers, like Travis
The main
Scott
character syndrome, the narcissism of Hollywood, right?
Yeah. Like I look at that Eric Andre, it's like, that's a true fan. He gets it. Like Jelly Roll's a true fan. He gets it. He doesn't want it. He didn't want to win anything.
He did get all of that. So Botchamania, you don't have to put up the kid and didn't get all of that little image. Really good stuff, though. Really good stuff. I feel like, and I wanted this to be what went right, too. So when you said, this is what we're going to do, I was like, oh, that's awesome, because there's so many little things in there. This year, Jacob Fatu, hopefully they're going to do a lot of good by him, because he's right up there. Believe it or not, by the way, isn't it weird that the best thing, mainstream media-wise, not just WWE, all over my feed, everywhere, everything, ESPN, other social media, the NBA games, the most overact in the company right now is Danhausen from a public relations standpoint. It's just really, really awesome.
Can you wait for the phone call to Mark Shapiro or whoever calls it? Hey, I think we need Danhausen to do this week. That's coming.
Now, it's something that's so not on brand with Danhausen and WWE. Actually, my biggest disappointment is Danhausen is doing interviews in the makeup, but talking as himself. I don't like that. Or he's doing interviews without the makeup.
Yeah, but didn't he do that he did that with Chris Van Vliet, didn't he? And was that not before he was signed?
I'm not sure when it was, but suspension of disbelief. We know he's not really Danhausen, but dude, the curse is working. The curse worked on Cleveland. The curse worked, I think, on the Carolina Hurricanes. I don't know how he pronounced it. He mispronounced it in a way that's much. But everybody curses, it actually works. So don't do it to me. I've had enough problems.
Have the Knicks won yet? I don't know.
Yeah, they did win, I think.
Do you know?
They talked about giving them a ring, a championship ring.
Knicks, did they win? Yes, they win in 5 games. There you go.
Amazing. Curse is real. Now there's your segue right there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. The curse is real. If you are not wearing hair that originally grew out of your scalp, Jade Cargill, afterwards she would say, my greatest nightmare happened on SmackDown last week. And she thinks the wig won. The wig came off during the show. Stevie, with your analytic skills that only you possess, what went wrong?
Well, her hair said, just like McMahon way back in the day, it was me. It was me all along. So, yeah, let's take. I never thought in the 102 episodes of the Stevie Richards Show how we've tried to educate and hopefully entertain everybody out there via the John Madden telestrator. I don't believe John Madden has ever done a telestrator segment where a player's hair has fallen out. But here we are. I guess I'm here for it. Let's see what happened and what went wrong. Up. There we go.
Not quite, not quite. It's the
So
suplex where it's
I
revealed.
do like the fact that it comes off. You got the Stevie Richards back chop. Look at that. Those do not feel good. Val Venus used to say, yeah, just give me the back chop. Then I back chop him. He say, don't give me the back chop. But there it is. She's like a luchador being unmasked during the match.
Mm.
But here's the superplex. That is the worst nightmare. Well, I mean, what can I say?
Well, the rest of the match ends up just Jade trying to keep her hair on the entire time. And she kind of does quite admirably through some of the moves.
Yeah, pump kick. She's developing moves or trying to put moves in that she doesn't have to take a back bump or, hold anybody like a suplex or anything like that. She's doing great, man. It was like a lot went right. Oh, yeah, everything, even the stall snatcher, done very well. She did the Stevie Richards DDT knee. I can identify with that. Really good job, though. Bring it back here. What can you say? Good camera cut. Dude, things flowed better with things in this match have flowed much better with a wig malfunction than when the wig malfunction didn't happen. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
It's actually one of the better matches.
I watched the match and I can't remember if it was before or after, but there was a bit where like Jade was setting up maybe Charlotte Flair or whoever it was, like for a Samoan drop on the second. And there was a chasm of time. You could have left the house, you could have gone to the cinema, watched a film, double feature, come back, and then still the move would not have happened yet because they were taking that long to set up. I don't know if this was post wig coming off or not, but it's like there are just certain bits, especially with these like four-way matches. They're doing a lot of them for King and Queen of the Ring at the moment, where obviously they're like rehearsing these to death. The women rehearse, as far as I can tell, more than the men do. But that one hurt me. You almost want Rico yelling, Jeff, God damn it! Like yelling at the top as long as to hurry up. Something? Goodness me, there was one bit there, but then the wig comes off and it kind of sped up.
Well, the internal clock that you should have is now it's tricky because you could rush and they tell you to slow down. Then you're slowing down to this point and you got to hurry it up. So you feel like nothing's over. What's the sweet spot? I would say you should always be struggling and fighting right up until you go. So basically 3, 2, 1, go. You know what I mean? So right up to when you're set to go, there should be a struggle. Now, when the weight came off when they're on the second rope, Charlotte went back to selling. After see her at the back shot, the weight came off. Then Charlotte leaned over, I think, to tell her, "Hey, can we do this?" Because it was setting up for the big Tower of Doom thing. But that was a good match. So it was kind of what went right. But man, Jade Cargill wrestling with one arm the whole time at the end.
I'm so stupid. I was just like, oh, Jade's got a good head of hair. It never occurred to me. But like other people wrestling wigs, like currently, like Mercedes Moné,
Yeah.
Someone's wig came off in AEW. I don't know who it was. I can't remember her name. I tried looking for it. I wrote it down somewhere. But it's not. It's happened not too long ago in AEW as well. Have you ever had? Because I've got an example
Kurt
for you.
Angle's wig would come off all the time when he's wearing the amateur helmet.
It would, but I kind of designed to. I think.
Well, I know it was great, but you know what I mean. It was just awesome to play into that.
Have you ever had any hair malfunctions yourself? For someone with very long hair at times in the wrestling business.
I've had people stand over me, and they have, I don't know if they've done it on purpose, probably in certain places, but standing over me as like I'm trying to sell and roll over and get to the ropes, and they're standing on my hair, hitting the pose or whatever. Like, ow, get off my hair. I've had people try to do the girl spot with me, pulling by my arms, and my hair would slip out off of that. So it would never work out. I've had hair, I had the Shawn Michaels tumbleweed happen in the ring, stuff like that, but not like I've never worn a wig or anything. I think when I didn't need to, they wanted me to wear a wig when I imitated Edge and Christian on that episode of SmackDown and Stevie kicked Gangrel from behind, but I just wore my own hair. The wig would have came off, no doubt. Now wait a minute, let's back up. I have a wig malfunction from Unforgiven. I had a dress malfunction. I had it. Hey, Jade, you ever feel bad? It's on YouTube. Watch it. You'll feel better. Were you asking me for that reason? Was it a therapy session of exploring repressed memories?
I asked you and then I thought about it afterwards while you were talking. I even wrote it down, write this down as well. Dude, Val Venus, right? One of the times I interviewed him, Sean said, I asked him, why'd you cut your hair? Like, why not do, like, you had good long
in his
hair.
Mouth. He used to swallow his hair every match.
Yeah, he said he like inhaled it and he went down his throat and he had to pull it out. I was like, Like,
every match. I remember that. Yeah.
Oh, dude, that's a terrible one. Do you know of any? I've got a few names. Wig-wearing wrestlers. Did you ever wrestle anyone who wore a wig?
Well, I wrestled people that would do the spray paint thing when they were balding up top. I won't mention their name.
Okay. Bruno, I know you didn't wrestle Bruno Sammartino, but there was Bruno, there was Tony Marino, who was the Batman. Oh, dude, what do you think that bird's nest was on his head?
Well, I know when he had the perm and everything, I was suspicious.
It was a wig. I asked a few people. I asked Greg Valentine that. I said, dude, you had to wrestle him in the wig. What did you do around it? And I can't remember the answer he gave me, but that was a wig. The Batman was.
But later, Bruno with the slick back Italian hair when he was balding, that was real.
If that was a wig, he should have got his money back.
That was a bad wig. You ever been a wig to be partially bald? Yeah. I don't think Bruno would have done that.
I mean, there's the whole Stan Lane thing where he had like a wig sewn onto his scalp in the early 90s and Smoky Mountain. There's a couple of others.
But now there's more people getting the Bosley stuff, and I saw certain people did testimonials for that.
Bosley?
The hair like the hair replacement surgery.
Oh, the transplants, yeah.
Yes.
What's the Bosley? Like Tom Bosley?
That's the same thing. They called it the Bosley hair replacement, and there's a couple other ones. My favorite was when Howard Finkel was at WrestleMania 10, came out with the hair club for men toupee.
Yes, that was weird because it made his head look really square. He looked like a Lego character.
He looked better bald than he did with the hair.
Yeah, I like how. What do you think, everybody? And everyone booed.
What was the guy's name? Sterling
or Sperling or something like that.
Yeah. I'm not just the president, I'm a member.
You know, you did work with someone very briefly who wore a wig. The cat, Stacey Carter. Was that ever an issue? She wouldn't wear it all the time.
No, she just wore it mainly with China. She wore the black wig.
Oh, no, she wore loads of them.
Well, I mean, and now it's all extensions. It's basically a wig no matter what with the female wrestlers.
Yeah, I guess so. So, all the fun at the fair, but Unforgiven 2004 once again rears its ugly head as a malfunction.
Well, if I can make Jade Cargill and everybody feel better who has been in that position, then my work is done here, at least for this week. There's a segue again.
And it certainly is the greatest segue I could have ever asked. We're going to shut down the show. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. We'll be back again next Thursday. We're out every single Thursday on YouTube and all podcast platforms, and fresh clips on the YouTube channel every single day as well. And over to Stevie to take us out of the show. By the way, normally we don't say what we're going to do next week because I don't have an idea. It's going to be part 2 of this. It's going to be the WWF Monday Night Raw stuff, Stevie's match, loads of other stuff, tons of stories coming out of that show. So hopefully you'll all look forward to that. But over to Stevie to take us out, and thank you to the Patreon members especially.
Yeah, first and foremost, thank you to everybody here on YouTube for subscribing and watching. Once again, please comment below. Patreon.com/Stevie Richards. As James said before, watch-alongs every Monday morning. We have a bonus watch-along actually midweek this week that we're going to put up besides the one we watched from Raw, which is basically myself versus Nunio, him trying to pretty much kill me as usual, me fighting for my life and somehow winning. Yeah, part of the Who I Ever Be. Should have put that in there. You would have been really, hey, what are you doing? Hey, I'm going to let you win. What are you doing? I never heard you. I'm light. Okay, FMW Japan wrestler. Okay, so thank you everybody once again. Watch-alongs every Monday, show notes every Tuesday, and of course the show before the show every Thursday morning. Want to repeat once again, we encourage everybody to go and subscribe to Perry Saturn's brand new YouTube channel working with Chase Brogan. Also check out Mark Jindrak. He's doing some stuff on YouTube as well. My Lucha Libre USA arch enemy, Marco Corleone. There, but once again, thank you everybody for watching episode 102 of the Stevie Richards Show. Out of Vince, 102 of the Stevie Richards Show. See you next week. For episode 103.